Got here at 8:30. 7? I'm good with 7. Are you on the statue at Common? Are you on the, is your name on the thing? You in the police station? Kind of weird that they would have names.
You're too long. Yeah. They gave out.
COVID.
5:15.
He doesn't. Oh, okay. I was gonna say like, oh, we don't wanna, I do have the, I was gonna bring up a calculator, but
Make me wanna.
I hate it.
It's like beyond.
Yeah, yeah,
I need
yeah,
to like dig.
yeah. And I'm like, what happened if we get our phone? Happened to me, but, except for today, obviously, we had no. Yeah. Yeah, but when it does it on, you have, I thought it would work on your work computer without needing it.
No, because
Yeah, right, right, right. But I just figured your app would come in there. Or,
oh yeah, then it would like
yeah,
pop up on the
yeah,
screen
yeah,
instead of being
yeah,
on
your
the phone.
phone, yeah. Yeah, I know.
This was just.
You still have. Today we had. But it had the fuel emissions for one. Crap. Because it's coming out as a committee report, even though the agenda's produced, there will be an amendment on the floor that it was captured in, in the committee of A and F. That, and then they have to bring it out and vote it, yeah, with the fire department.
Yeah, 'cause I had that one
Yeah,
moved.
yeah,
know.
so they'll have to
Yeah.
amend it on the floor, but they're
Yeah.
allowed to if they pass it in A
Yeah.
and F. So, are you telling me that?
No, I just was. I was
Yeah,
trying to, I
I
was trying to
got
remember what we
flu,
did last.
so-
I was trying to.
Yeah, yep, so they'll come out, even though the agenda's posted as, an amendment. And then if there's anybody that has problems, who wants it fixed. That's how it, just want to roll call vote in like
No,
36
well,
departments. So next year, we're gonna see
cool,
what, yeah,
Unless they.
yeah, okay.
It's like,
Uh,
but
yeah.
if they're just like going to
Yeah.
started polling
yeah.
people, I was like, most communities
Yeah,
are just
yeah.
voting individual funds and
Yeah.
then like they're like capital and their other,
Yeah.
the other.
So I would love to, like, we've cut down one step of voting on each expense and
Yeah.
personnel, but, I would love to, if there's,
Yeah,
if
there's-
it's not, you know, a finance law
No,
allows it, then we're
no.
good. Be a law. Because that was one thing that it was like, why we voted it line by line. We were told, years ago that like, then, instead of doing a transfer, if you voted it all together, like, people could move expenses to salary and
Oh,
vice
no.
versa.
It's just,
or,
maybe the
um,
language just needs,
yeah.
sorry, when I said that's here, well,
Yes,
but
right.
it doesn't have to be like,
Right, that's why we used to do it that way.
because some communities.
City Council Committee on Administration and Finance, co-posted with the Committee of the Whole, is meeting in council chambers today, Wednesday, June 7th at 6 p.m. for the purpose of discussing fiscal year 2024 departmental operating budgets and associated capital plan improvement projects. This meeting is being held in City Council chambers at 93 Washington Street on the second floor. Notice of this meeting was posted on May 31st, 2023 at 2:37 p.m. Members of the public who are unable to attend the meeting, the primary meeting here, may access and follow along using Zoom by entering webinar ID 826-8186-9351 and entering password 725-9888. Joining us tonight from the Committee on Administration and Finance are all members excluding Counselor Watson Felt. Joining us from the Committee of the Whole are Counselors Cohen, Priscillo, Dominguez, Krasnowski. And it looks like we are starting tonight with our very own city clerk. Very exciting. So I'll give it to you the same way that I give it to everybody else over the last few days. Try to pretend you've never met us, which is a little tough because we see you all the time, but pretend you've never met us. Go over what exactly the scope of work is for the clerk's office, let people know what you do, and then we'll dive into the numbers.
My name is Eileen Simons, and I'm the city clerk for the city of Salem. Thank you for having me tonight, and nice to meet you. So in the city clerk's office, we are divided into about 3 departments. There's a city council and city clerk, which involves most of our vital records, and then the elections office. And each of those departments are done separately for the budget. And so the gamut runs from attending the council meetings and being the parliamentarian for city council. We do keep vital records for birth, death, marriages, all other licenses, and obviously run all federal, state, and local elections. Anybody have any questions on that? Okay. And what did you want me to, I'm sorry.
It's really up to you. Is there anything that you would like to highlight in your operating budget that may have been significant changes or things you would like us to be aware of? And then at your leisure, we can also hop into any capital projects that you may
Sure.
have added.
Would you like to do it by department as it is in the budget book? It might be easier.
Yes, please. Let's go
Okay.
one table at a time.
All right, so I believe that the first department is city council. So, so as you can see, some of my goals and objectives there is to continue work with our new Civic Plus for new software. And I've been having training with somebody at Civic Plus. I have a new trainer and he's very, very good. And we learned a lot from him in one session. Then we learned from somebody else for many more. And I've looked into having the city council meetings translated into Spanish on a real-time simultaneous interpretation. And I've reached out to 2 companies, and I believe, and I know there's some support with the city council, so I'd like to be able to do that. Let's see, there's no, well, the only significant staffing change is that Councilor McCarthy will hopefully be joining us back in the council chambers after moving from one room to the other. I think, just continuing getting better on the hybrid meetings with the sound and the volume and the audio and the video. And we're still tweaking that, but now that we adopted the primary and secondary method, I think that will be a big help to all of us in terms of if we do have a technical issue. And that's what I have. And then in terms of budget for that, all city councilors are 10% of the mayor's salary. So except for the council president. So they're still all at $15,000. And then the council president will receive $15,500. And everything else, except for our new minute taker, there's been last year, there was an organ object added for that. And other than that, everything stayed the same. And most of our expenses, there was an increase in the advertising costs, which is very hard to predict because of it depends how many ordinances, traffic zoning ordinances, bonds that come through council to advertise. Advertising rates have gone, up in price. And the other increase is at the printing and binding, again, just basically due to costs of paper and that's been an issue. And let's see, in our in-state travel, we requested an extra 1,500. One of the counselors have asked for that, and that was also placed in the budget. Let's see, and dues and subscription, everything else seemed to stay the same. I certainly talk more.
Councilor Morrison.
Thank you, Chair. I just noticed on the data, you have a bump up in ordinances, parking and zoning. What do
Mhm.
you know that we don't know?
It's just what you bring in. There's, what's that? Oh, for next year? Oh, the estimates? Just
Just looking
Just
forward to the.
a guesstimate really in terms of, I figured next year, more zoning might come in than we didn't have for the first, 5 or 6 months of this year. So there might be more zoning, and, and just trying to kind of guess what's going on.
And those numbers are used to determine your advertising budget?
It's kind of hard because it depends on the size of an ad. But that reflects why advertising costs have gone up and why I requested more money. It is reflective of that. So, that is why.
Do we have a target date for starting to use the software?
Well, hopefully, in the fall, I was trying, we got a little sidetracked with some special elections this year to be able to, work on it the first 5 months.
It's your fault. Yep.
And so I'm hoping over the summer, Maureen and I, we do have another training session set. And then there would obviously have to be some talk with the administration due to the new turnover in administration. I know the previous administration was on board with it, but I do have to have some conversations.
Well, I mean, I think it's training more than anything else. Like, they have to be on board because we
Right.
own it and.
Right.
Right. And a
Yeah,
decision
and
was
they will
made.
have to be able to, they'll be trained to put in what they give me
Yeah, so
instead of,
And we need to be trained also.
not as much,
Not
but
as
yes.
much, but there has to be
Yeah,
some training.
Yeah,
There-
so, it takes time and, what we're trying to do, Maureen and I, is going to try to do like a dual, like do the regular agenda the way we do it, and then internally just do, if it's not a full agenda, but the same agenda, but through the software program. So to see how that comes out.
Right, okay.
Mhm.
Okay, thanks.
Councilor Dominguez. Oh, let the record show we've been joined by Councilor Watson Felt remotely. Councilor Dominguez.
Thank you, Chair McLean. Thank you, Madam City Clerk. Good to see you. It's always a pleasure to see that the department is improving so many areas. I know you have a new addition on your personnel, got a new members of the personnel in the electoral office, I think.
We have a part-time person, but I was waiting for that for the election when we get to that budget, but yes.
Okay, my question is based on, are you in full capacity with the employees that you need to have in the whole department, or you need to still have some?
Well, we would never turn away more people, but we are functioning of what we have.
Go back to the translation, which I'm very grateful that I hear that you in the process of getting translation into Spanish for the council meeting. You say you had 2 companies already set up. Can you go over the price that you find out on?
I talked to 2 companies. One is an individual person that I visited, he came here and we talked back in April. And I know that at some point you wanted to speak, or reach out to talk to them yourselves in terms of their Spanish and their fluency. And so his rate was about $70 an hour. And the other company that's Bay State Interpreters, they are a bigger company and it's not, you're not sure who you're going to get for each meeting, but they're about $105 an hour. So there's a little bit of a difference. And, I would like, if possible, maybe have a trial, do one trial meeting or something with one of them or one, each of them.
Very good. I like to make the same comment I made the other day when we was talking about translation, that, we need to make sure that the translation is universal so everybody understands exactly
Right.
what is mean for the entire population, not only for one region or for one country.
Right.
Thank you so much for your work. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Am I correct in remembering that our school committee is already using live translation services?
Yes, and
Have you had an opportunity to?
yeah, I called Mindy over there, and I believe it's a teacher or a person from the school department that does it. So, I don't think she does it as a second, or a job themselves. But yes, I had reached out to them to see how they did it and, what it costs. And I don't know what they pay her or anything like that. I forget who else Mindy suggested to reach out to, but yes, I do know they do that. So I'd like to be able to do that as well.
Thank you.
And
Just curious if you
Yeah.
had an opportunity to talk to them, mostly because I was curious if there were any sort of particular standards that we were looking for in
Um,
terms of what an individual or company could provide.
Yeah, I believe I mean, I can reach out to IT, but I believe they go into a separate Zoom room that people can log into and that they would be basically translating at the same time as all of you in here are speaking. And so I don't know in terms of like public testimony or anything like that, if how it goes back and forth, but at least there's a different Zoom room that somebody would be able to listen to all in Spanish.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Councilor Dominguez?
Thank you, Chairman McLean. A follow-up question, and that is, there's going to be any translation here in the room? Say we have a public hearing and we have many different languages here all combined. We're going to provide translation live right in here?
I believe that they would most likely do it remotely from Zoom, but I can always ask about that.
Yeah, that would be very important because sometimes we had large group of people and some of the topic might be pertaining to the Latino community and they don't even want it to come because they don't understand what's going on. So it's watching on Zoom only, where most of the people are not maybe too familiar with Zoom if they wanted to be here presently.
So I think what you're asking, if somebody is just speaking in the room, so that would not be the case. It would be the case that somebody would have to be on Zoom listening to the meeting, not like not here in the room talking or translating to a group of people. Is that?
I noticed that, for
okay.
example, in church, we had translation service
Mhm.
where we provide some type of device. If we are here in the room, whoever is, there is a group of Latino here, if they need translation, they put the device and the person who's translating might be in the other room translating what's going on here so they know exactly what's going on. That's something
Something
that
I can look into. I'm not sure. I know we have assistive devices for people with, hearing challenges, but in terms of having that for working in a different language, I don't know. I have to be honest. I would have to look into that.
Thank you for that, Councilor Dominguez. I agree. It's an important point of consideration. We're going to say this is our primary meeting location. We want to have our services appended to our primary meeting location. Councilor Hapworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and agreed on translation services. So thanks, Councilor Dominguez. I just would want to add that as an accomplishment, the iPads that got to each counselor, which I think is something we've been talking about for a long time. I think it goes a long ways towards reducing paper and printing and all that kind of stuff. So appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And I'm also ready to make a motion on this one if we want to move on to the city clerk's office if there's no other comments. Move to approve the personnel budget in the amount of $178,700 the expenditures amount in the amount of 74,907 for a department total of 253,607.
Counselor Hapworth moves to recommend approval of the city council personnel budget in the amount of 178,700, expenditures in the amount of 74,907 for a total of 253,607, seconded by Counselor Stott. We have one counselor remote, so we will do a roll call vote. Let me get my order of call ready. Okay, doing a roll call vote. Counselor Merkel,
Yes.
Counselor Hapworth,
Yes.
Counselor Watson Felt, I see a thumbs up. We'll work on the audio portion of this moving forward, I guess. I'm not sure why we're not here. Volume is on. Counselor Stott,
Yes.
myself is a yes. That's 5 in favor, 0 against. That matter carries.
All right, so the next department we're going to is the city clerk's department. And as you trying to sum up for the mission statement that the city clerk is the custodian and keeper of records and the city seal and all the reporting of vital records that include the birth, death, and marriages that are processed and preserved and certified from our office. And they go back to the beginning. I think I don't know, 1800, 1600, we have birth records. We do a lot of affidavits in the office as well, as long as dogs, business certificates, yard sales, all other types of things as well. But the vitals keep us the most busy, and we can do those online. In our dog program now, we went to a new dog program that seems to be a lot easier to use definitely for my staff, and I believe for the customers as well. There have been a few complaints, but I don't think there's been as many as when we used view permit. So unfortunately, there's a little cost to that view permit. I know there was none, but that view permit goes down a lot, and it's been very hard to search for dogs, and it doesn't work always for some of the licenses that we use. So, and we have some marriage and forms and other forms that we're translating into Spanish as well to put online. And that was, and then I also signed up in time to get our State Ethics Commission on the online program, which is kind of a trial basis where instead of doing the paper for the acknowledgement of the summary of the conflict of interest law and the online training, it can all be done by the employee online. And I can send out reports on a monthly basis to department heads to see if their employees are in compliance with it. Let's see, and some other so that those are a lot of like the mission and the goals and accomplishments on that. And as you can see, some of our birth records, our copies of our vital records have increased, and that's, whether most of them are, believe it or not, in person. There are some online, but that's, why we always have sort of a busy counter in our room 3, I call it. And our marriages have gone up, and our affidavits have also very time consuming, and unfortunately they have gone up too. And we're one is still a birthing hospital in Salem, so we're always going to have a lot of birth records sent to us, whether they live in Salem or not. And so in there, on going backwards on the expenditures or the expenses, there really has been no change from fiscal year 23. We asked basically for the same for 24, which have been added into the budget except for the dog licenses because of the new software program. But I believe it makes up for it in the end in terms of mostly like frustration. So it's more efficient and easier for the customers. And I think that's a benefit that outweighs the cost. And on the personnel side, I have some 3 union employees that I had to, do the contractual salaries for them. And so those are figured in there, as well as, and then on the non-management side, those were level funded. And then I believe it was a 2% COLA on that. And so I don't have, so those are the numbers.
So Councilor Dominguez.
Thank you, Councilor McLean, Chair McLean, sorry. Thank you once again, the clerk, and the department is being very, very active. I see it basically the last month, the special election and many others. But my comments, which is an appreciation to you and to your fellow employees, is that I see the effort that you have done on bring the diversity into the whole spectrum, not only on your personnel, but also on working on getting the translation on, as we just mentioned before, but also on writing, and that's really benefit the entire city. I think that you've been approaching so many other organizations because I know firsthand your effort, but recently you have a collaboration with the school department to bring some of the bilingual students so they can be part of a program that will help the election process. Not only will help in the election process, but also I think that we send the message to the youth to get involved in civic actions. So to me, that speaks very loud and clear that your effort as a department is very well received for the community. So thank you so much for what you're doing. And I think that's that level of diversity that you bring to your actions going to help in the long and the short run, the move forward the city of Salem. So thank you so much.
Councilor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair McLean, to City Clerk. In your synopsis, you had your initiative for the department to participate in the Spanish language learning. What's the level of participation? How do you feel that's going? Because so many people do come to your department who may not speak English.
So far, I don't know if any of my employees took advantage of that. Sometimes the dates and the times don't work for us, and it's very difficult to, for everybody, nobody can all go at once because there's got to be coverage in the office. We're very fortunate that we have a bilingual employee in room 3. She's great, and she does get a little bit of the extra workload for when the Spanish-speaking community does come in, and she's just really, I can't say enough of being able to have her in my office. It's very beneficial for any department to have a bilingual person in their office. She's been trying to teach some of the other girls in that same office a little bit of Spanish, and just at least to converse with the customers if need be, instead of going to the training for that. And when we get to the elections, I do have a bilingual person back in that office, which I'm thankful for.
Seeing nothing further. Councilor Hapworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move to approve the personnel budget in the amount of $350,249, expenditures budget in the amount of $13,870 for a grand total of $364,100.
used to this end. Sorry. Oh, and one thing, I mean, I did send an email and I want to thank Anna and Mayor Pangallo about, although it's not, noted in the budget book, that will be taken care of. So I appreciate that very much. And finally, I have my, oh, sorry.
No, it's different. You're on the opposite side of the room. It's a whole different ballgame. Um,
Not now.
Counselor Hapworth moves to recommend approval of the city clerk personnel budget in the amount of 350,249, expenditures in the amount of 13,870 for a total of 364,119, seconded by Counselor Stott. Again, we are going to attempt a roll call vote. My apologies to our clerk for our committee tonight, Eileen Sacco. I'm going to do it in a different order than I did the first time and see if I can get it right. Counselor Hapworth.
Yes.
Counselor Merkel.
Yes.
Counselor Stott.
Yes.
And Counselor Watson-Felt. I can see you saying yes, and I can see your thumb, but I can't hear you, and I don't know why. Yes. No, it's not muted. So. And I am a yes, so that is 5 voting, 5 in favor. The matter carries. Oh,
Can you hear me now?
yes, I can. Okay, so we will hear you going forward. That's great. And we'll move forward to elections and registrations.
So this election registrations is obviously a very important department. I mean, obviously council and vital records are too, but in the past, especially since COVID, it's taken on a new meaning. And I'm pretty proud of like what we accomplish in elections and registrations, especially where in 2022, we had to become, we were required by the U.S. Justice Department to become a bilingual city in terms of our Spanish. And, I'm glad to say that we already had a lot of things in Spanish, so we didn't have to go, we were in very good shape there. And so this election was our very first time having our own local elections with Spanish on the ballot. And I think it worked out very well. And I'm very happy with, what we accomplished there, like I said, in terms of, setting up our polling places. We're handicapped accessible. We have the virtual poll workers that can speak any language. It doesn't have to be somebody comes in and speaks Russian or Portuguese. We can help them with that as well. There's like, I don't know how many languages on the iPad there. And so my goals and objectives, probably Anthony has been very patient with me. We have an RFP that came back in for our voting equipment. I just really need to take a look at it in terms of picking one of the 2 certified companies, in the state that are allowed to provide us with equipment. And so that's one of my goals and objectives, and additionally try to purchase something that would allow us to tabulate votes in the office without, especially for the next presidential, without having to send thousands of ballots to the polls for them to process themselves. And this is where I'm also very happy that we have an additional, we have a part-time bilingual person. That spot has been, the part-time bilingual has been kind of a difficult one to attract and to retain. But now, and that's one of the significant budget staffing changes, if it's approved, that I will be getting one full-time employee in that office, which will be bilingual and instead of the part-time person. And hopefully that person will, will want to become full-time. And this is where Councilor Dominguez alluded to my work with some of the high school students to be bilingual and go to the polls and help to be, and they're not like missing school. They don't get marked absent. And I have 4 terrific kids, and it's been great to see them, and, all the poll workers love the youth and their enthusiasm and their, to be there and work with them, and it's been working out very good, and I hope I can gain more students, all different ways. And, let's see, what else? So that's a lot of that, in terms of, my goals and objectives. Obviously, we had a very successful September and November 22 elections for the state elections. And I can say the 2023 special elections, as well. And a lot of the permanent, a lot of the temporary vote by the Votes Act became permanent um, as of last year. So we've been working with that. There are some things in the council just last week adopted something to at least help out our office a little bit without having to be open on a Saturday for local elections. But as you can see, some of the changes, and I think that's all that I want to cover. I apologize. I'm trying to look quickly down here. Dual language and that. And, yeah. So unless, and then also changing our charter or our home rule petition for the special election that, I want to thank also the city solicitor, Beth Renard, who helped me work on that, and to thank you for the council for letting, to try to change the special act of 1960. That would only give me 3 weeks to have done a primary and a final election for a special. So that was huge as well. And we got through our special election. So congratulations, Ms. Tangelo. And ready for, let's see. Yeah, get to do it again. I had so much fun. 2 down, 2 to go. Let's see, our voters are, actually, I just looked for the last time, they're 32,915. So that's gone up from a little bit of the estimated amount. And let's see, as you know, let's see, my request for seasonal labor, and I talked a little bit with the finance director last week or week and a half ago about, my request for the 94,000 for the seasonal labor. It went down to what I had in fiscal year 2023. And I just put it in for that amount because there's 3 elections actually in fiscal year 2024. So not only having 4 elections this year, I'll be having, there'll be 3 elections for, 2 elections at this time will be, plus the March one will be for this fiscal year, but calendar year, there'll still be 3 elections as well. And that's why the increase in overtime, I requested that, they level funded at fiscal year 2023, and I'm sure we'll have to figure that out if, when we cross that bridge. And let's see. So that's, and as you can see that the part-time election worker was zeroed out and the one full-time Ask Me worker was put in. And the contractual step for my one Ask Me person in there. And one of the, the changes, printing and binding, although it wasn't what I requested, it was increased from fiscal year 23 because of, there's just more elections and higher prices for printing and binding. And voting machine services, again, all prices for coding and technology and everything that I have to do for my equipment, all the prices have gone up. So I try to account for that as best as I could. And other than that, everything else seemed to be no change from fiscal year 23 to 24. It matched. I only requested those were level funded.
Counselor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair McLean, to the city clerk. I think it's imperative, and so I'm glad that you have money for a full-time bilingual person, not just to be able to hire someone, but to retain them, because not having benefits might keep people who would want to have the job for a longer period. So I think that's terrific because I think it's really important for our city. I do want to acknowledge a positive. Some people have reached out and are grateful that the polling places have a space for people who have mobility challenges, and want to mention that so people who in the past were not able to vote as easily as other people are able to do so.
Yeah, there's been some, thank you. There's been some changes, that we use on the local and the state level in terms of even if they didn't want to go to, I mean, the polls there, they certainly can, but there's also what we call the omni ballot now as well, that people that have visual or mobility with their hands to mark a ballot have the ability now to get a ballot also online. So there's some good changes and some not, but but I'm glad that every voter that wants to vote can vote and vote on their own independently if they want to.
Counselor Dominguez?
Thank you, Chair McLean. I have one curiosity question. Maybe I should know, but how do you prepare for special election so quickly? And in terms of the budget, what is the number exactly? What is the cost of that special election? If you can reveal that to us, how much it was.
Yeah. We figured out what it sort of would cost. Like we figured out that each election, like poll workers are about $25,000, and we went through all that. And there was an appropriation that came into the council, I believe you said January, that gave me the supplement to be able to run that election. So that is where I got that money. But in terms of putting it together, just years of experience and having a good staff. So
That past 17 years without having
a lot, yeah.
and that was really a very impressed way of doing it. So thank you. Very impressed. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Counselor Merkel?
Thank you, Chair McLean. I just want to very quickly thank you and your staff. There's been a lot of changes in elections, good changes, mail-in voting, a lot more options. And I appreciate that. That means a lot of change, a lot more work to do. I think it's great we've crossed the threshold for Spanish ballots, and I like the program where students come in, and I love anything that involves a collaborative effort with students for civic engagement. And there's been a lot happening over the last couple of years in elections and in special elections. So I just want to say thank you to you and your staff.
You're welcome. As difficult it is, and it's stressful, but I do love elections. So there's that.
Madam City Clerk, did I hear you mention as you were giving the description that there are polling staff making use of iPads for translation services? Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, they're called virtual poll workers, and they're basically, they are an iPad that when you log into the software program, it comes up, and if somebody comes on and you tell them that I need somebody that speaks Spanish, and whatever it does, and it brings a Spanish person on, they don't have to know the election laws per se, because they're from all over the country, but as long as like the warden would say to them, can you please tell them I need, whether it's ID or they need to fill out this form. Well, the forms are all in Spanish, but just something that if there's difficult, then that translator will translate it to the person in their language, and that person would speak back to the person on the iPad. And it's a real person, and that person then would translate back to English to my warden or clerk. And
is that available at all of our polling locations?
yes, I have 14 of them. Not 14, I'm sorry. I have 8 of them. So it's like they share in the double, and then 1, 1, and 1, 2 each have one. So, and then I can also use it. I haven't had to yet, but I can also use it like in my vital records room, or anybody can use it. It's just called virtual poll workers, that how the company probably marketed for the city clerks and town clerks, but I think it can be used for anything. Yeah, kind of cool.
It's a great service. I'm, I'd be curious to hear the follow-up on maybe we can be using it in other locations because elections tend to be a short part of the calendar. So if it's something that we can use to support our services the rest of the calendar year round, that we're already paying for the service anyway,
Yeah,
and not
they-
that idea.
You just get billed for the minutes that you use it. So, yeah,
Still probably worth it.
it's still, I believe it is. Again, one of those benefits that outweigh the cost. And I don't think, I can't remember, but might be 50 cents a minute. I can't recall offhand, but it's not bad at all.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Seeing nothing further. Counselor Hapworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move to approve the personnel budget in the amount of 248,176, expenditures budget in the amount of 56,650 for a grand total of 304,826.
Counselor Hapworth moves to recommend approval of the elections and registration personnel budget in the amount of 248,176, expenditures in the amount of 56,650 for a total of 304,826, seconded by Counselor Stott. And I will do a roll call vote once again, starting with Counselor Hapworth,
Yes.
Counselor Merkel,
Yes.
Counselor Stott, Counselor Watson-Felt.
Yes.
That worked great that time. I am also a yes, so that is 5 in favor. That matter carries. Thank you, Madam City Clerk, for joining us.
You're welcome. See you tomorrow.
It's true. We live in these chambers this week. We'll move forward to purchasing. Welcome back.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
So my name's Anthony Delaney. I am the Chief Procurement Officer for the City of Salem. The purchasing department is composed of myself and one full-time and one part-time assistant. We oversee the purchasing and disposal of assets for the entire city, including the schools. Small purchases are initiated by staff members in all of the departments. They get approved by their department head, and then they come to our office for our approval, where we make sure that they're being paid from the right budget, that they've been procured with the correct vehicle or contract, and then they get converted to purchase orders. Larger requisitions or procurements go through a more formal process where our office will assist in developing the specs, publishing the required notices, receiving the bids, evaluating them, and formatting and awarding the contract. We also handle any disposal of surplus property or materials as needed.
Okay, thank you. Probably one of these functions that maybe some folks in the private sector don't totally understand, but really, really critical for a municipal operation because there's a lot more rules governing how we make our agreements and our contracts and what we're going to purchase. So appreciate the diligent work.
And they vary based on the kind of good or service you're ordering and how much it costs, and multitude of factors.
Counselor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair McLean, to you. I'm not sure the rationale, but for some reason, energy projects don't require RFPs. And yet I'm encouraging us to do that when the project is of a certain size or larger, and hope that will be something that we will insist on so that we have the proper process. That makes sense.
So that is true. There's a long and sometimes very strange list of procurements that don't require certain RFPs or IFPs. They may be subject to other regulations, but yes, energy projects. I assume you're talking about energy efficiency improvement projects, not utility purchases. Yep, those are governed under Chapter 25A. We do have the option of conducting a standard procurement on those, and don't necessarily need to avail ourselves of the 25A exemption. That's a decision that we made with both not necessarily just by me, but in collaboration with the departments and probably on a per project basis. But we also conducted a full RFP last year for an ESCO company to assist us in developing, procuring all of those projects going forward.
Okay, seeing nothing further. Counselor Hapworth?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you want to do fixed costs separately?
I do.
So I'd like to make a motion to approve the general admin personnel budget in the amount of 183,741, the general administration expenditures budget in the amount of 25,396 for a grand total of 209,137.
Counselor Hapworth moves to recommend approval of the purchasing general administration personnel budget in the amount of 183,741, expenditures in the amount of 25,396 for a total of 209,137, seconded by Counselor Stott. Counselor Hapworth,
Yes.
Counselor Merkel,
Yes.
Counselor Stott,
Yes.
Counselor Watson-Felt,
Yes.
and I am also a yes. It's 5 in favor, 0 against. That carries. We will move into fixed costs. I do want to offer the reminder that if there's anything related to capital improvements, you're welcome to dive right into that.
There isn't anything for my department related to capital improvements, although my department works and touches so many of those things. I myself don't oversee any kind of budget like that. Our fixed costs mostly consist of advertising notices for bids, the software that we use to maintain our electronic signature records, and cost to maintain our certifications. Last year, we moved the wireless cell phone line out of the purchasing department and into IT. So that's not there anymore. So really, it's just the copiers and related supplies.
Seeing no questions or comments, we'll move right to a motion. Counselor Hapworth,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move to approve the fixed cost expenditures budget in the amount of 39,181.
Counselor Hapworth moves to recommend approval of the purchasing fixed cost expenditures in the amount of 39,181, seconded by Counselor Stott. Counselor Hapworth,
Yes.
Counselor Merkel,
Yes.
Counselor Stott,
Yes.
and Counselor Watson-Felt.
Yes.
I'm also a yes. That's 5-4. The matter carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Collector.
Hi, my name is Bonnie Sally, and I'm the collector. I run the office downstairs. We have 4 employees. One is Spanish speaking, Ara Salis, and she is a wonderful employee who helps out very many people that come into the office. We actually collect all the revenue that comes in through the city, property taxes, personal property, motor vehicle excise, water, sewer and trash, parking tickets, boat tax, mooring slips, and city ordinance tickets. We're also passport acceptance agents, which we get recertified every year, and all of us are certified. And again, we, rely on ARI a lot, especially lately for passports, because that it does get difficult. And I have looked into getting them in Spanish, but believe it or not, the government does not provide them in Spanish. So all you can do is assist your customers at this time. They aren't giving us any passports that are in Spanish, which I'm kind of surprised at that, but so far that's that. Processing municipal lien certificates, which are realtors, anybody that's had an insurance claim in their house, they have to have a legal document that comes from our office that says all the taxes are paid before an insurance company will pay out or before they can transfer ownership of a property, so that a new owner doesn't get caught having taxes owed on something that was the prior owner. So that's pretty much what we do in the collector's office. And I don't know if anybody has any questions. Nothing really has changed at all in our budget. It's level funded. So we haven't asked for anything this year.
Counselor Dominguez.
Thank you, Chair McLean, and thank you, Bonnie, for all you do. I'm very familiar with the departments. I usually pay a lot of tickets over there and what it's, so you're doing a great job. So thank you for what you're doing. I just wanted to go back to the passport program that you just mentioned. Are you advertising that type of
It's
program?
funny, I
Because
just met this morning with Mayor Pangallo, and that is something that we are going to now put in when they send out their welcoming packets to the new residents. We're going to make out a little postcard, and we are going to put it in there. The other thing that I'm looking to do is put it in with the tax bills. But I'm not quite sure that I want to do the tax bills or if I'm better off doing the water sewer bills, because a lot of people that are owners don't necessarily live in the property, whereas I might get to more people if I do the water and sewer. So that is something that we're going to look forward to doing too. But water and sewer only goes out quarterly. But I don't think that enough people know that we do passports in City Hall. And it's getting harder and harder now to do it at the post office because I honestly don't think the post office really wants to be in that business. So I do want to get that out to more people that we do that, and we do accept appointments every day.
that was my point. And be ready because you're going to have a lot of people coming to you. So
Good. No, that's a good thing. But like I say, we got to get the word out, and I think that's going to be great putting the packets, and I do think I'm probably going to lean towards the water sewer bills rather than the real estate bills, because I think I'll get more people that actually live in the city that way.
good. Thank you.
Counselor Morstillo.
Thank you, Chair. How do you make an appointment? Can you do it online or do you have to call up?
We don't do it online, and that would be a little difficult because we, keeping up with the spots that are already filled. So we have people calling in.
Okay.
And we're taking them that way, because we have to make sure that we don't have two at the same time. Because when people are paying, it takes a little while to do a full passport. Because once we start it, we have to finish it. That's per the government rules. You can't like leave something half done and wait for someone to come back with a picture or something, because it's just too much personal information on everything. So as soon as it's done, it has to go in the safe and be brought right over to be mailed by the end of the day. Thank you. Yep.
Two questions in my mind. The first is about the municipal liens. I just noticed that there was a pretty drastic drop in the trend year over year over year. And I have some assumptions about what that might be, but I'd like to ask if you have a sense of what's actually driving that change in numbers.
We had a lot more housing sales right after COVID when we did that great big housing, and the rates were better. Now the rates are going up. So as many people aren't refinancing as they were before. So they're not requesting as many municipal lien certificates. I do know that banks still require the municipal lien certificate. So certainly if they are looking to do that, they would have to send it in. So I would have to only believe that there's not as many passing papers anymore, and as there was when that really crazy housing boom that we had a little while ago.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then the question that I think probably every one of my residents would ask is, how can I get a discount? No, that was a good answer.
Get a water discount if you pay your water bill by the discount date. So we do have discounts for that. There is no such thing as a discount on a real estate bill, unfortunately, and not on an excise bill either.
All right, well, take 1 out of 3, I guess.
And the assessor, when he presents, he can talk about the abatement options that exist for folks. He has a lengthy list of those, I believe.
Oh, great. We love discounts in this chamber. Councilor Dominguez?
I just remember a program that I don't know if it was your department that drive. People bring 1 canes.
Yes.
That's from your department. Can you go over a little bit about so people?
So parking tickets, once a year, it does go through the council, and it's usually right after Thanksgiving, and we do it for 30 days up until Christmas Eve. and people bring in canned goods that we then donate to the food pantry. And we'll take off up to 2 fees off the tickets. The only thing that we can't take on is the mark fee from the registry because they actually bill the city for that. It actually gets taken off our cherry sheet money, so we'd lose money if we did that. But we do have 2 fees that will take off the late charge and then the first penalty after that. So they can save up to $30 on late tickets. And it's called P's for Fees because they donate canned goods. So it's kind of a name we came up with years ago. Everybody really loves the program. We'll usually run a list and send out information to anybody that has multiple tickets to just let them know that we're doing it at that time of year. But that will be something that will be put forward to you probably around middle of November to approve.
Okay, seeing nothing further. Councilor Hapworth,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move to approve the personnel budget in the amount of 270,674, expenditures budget in the amount of 8,300 for a grand total of 278,974.
Councilor Hapworth moves to recommend approval of the collector personnel budget in the amount of 270,674, expenditures in the amount of 8,300 for a total of 278,974, seconded by Councilor Stott. Councilor Hapworth,
Yes.
Councilor Merkel,
Yes.
Councilor Stott, and Councilor Watson-Felt.
Yes.
I'm also a yes. 5-4, 0 against. That carries.
Thank you very much. Have a nice night.
Thank you. You as well. On to the assessor. Welcome back. Lots of time under your belt this time.
Yes, thank you so much. Good evening, counselors. Stephen Cortez, Director of Assessing. The FY24 budget proposal for the assessing department has not changed much from last year, with a few exceptions that I will explain. But before I do that, I want to share a brief synopsis of the duties and responsibilities of the assessing department before I begin. The assessing department operates on a cyclical basis, most notably with our revaluations and inspections. However, our duties essentially remain the same from year to year. The assessors are required by Mass General Law to value all real and personal property and prepare tax billing commitments for real and personal property and motor vehicle and boat excise tax. The assessing department staff consists of 2 principal clerks, 2 assistant assessors, 1 director of assessing, along with 3 board members. Our daily routine includes assisting the customers with inquiries, abatements, and exemptions, inspection scheduling, address changes, deed updating, identifying parcel changes, and updating the city tax maps, just to name a few. We put extensive work into our portion of the website, which goes into great detail regarding the assessment process, the inspection process, and timelines for filing for abatements and exemptions. I would recommend that anyone listening, please feel free to visit our portion of the site, especially the personal exemptions that are offered for individuals who could possibly benefit with help in paying their tax bills. So with salaries and there's been no staff change this fiscal year. We are fully staffed. Personnel lines reflect cost of living adjustments and any salary survey adjustments. Contract services line. Here I cleaned up and consolidated the descriptions. Our contract services line is where we pay for the majority of our functional operating expenses, such as maintenance fee for our Patriot Properties Assess Pro CAMA system, legal counsel regarding ATV cases and TIF agreements, tax billing and sales analysis work plan, 3 appraisal reports mandated by the DOR for Salem's personal property utility companies, and required posting of our notices, some of which these costs have changed due to the changing market and inflation. The real change here comes from the addition of the pushpin and near map programs that were formerly approved in our FY23 CIP budget. They are now moved to our continuing contract service budget line. Nearmap is an aerial imagery capture program that consists of 3 or more plane flyovers per year. It's like a Google Earth, but more often and with clearer images. Nearmap is also used by the IT department, the engineering department, planning department, fire department, and the parking department for their respective needs. Although we share this program with multiple departments and users, splitting the cost is more a logistical burden for finance than it is to keep it in one department's budget. Pushpin is a program that utilizes the images captured by Nearmap and runs through an AI technology to detect changes in the parcels. These changes could range from new additions to demolitions and reconfigurations. Sometimes work is done without building permits, and there are times when the assessing department is flat out denied access to the property. In these cases, it is state law that we estimate the percentage of completion of the work done. This program helps us fine tune our estimates when we are denied entry due to lack of permits, fear of government, or during this post-COVID era. So far, with these two programs that cost roughly $9,700, we have collected $27,000 in today, as of today's date, in new growth tax dollars. It has already paid for itself and then some. To refresh your memory, new growth tax dollars are used to help raise the levy limit, which is used to pay for the city's budget and other articles approved by the city council. For FY23, 50% of the budget was funded by the tax levy. The remainder came from state aid, local receipts, enterprise and CIP funds, and other revenues. Printing and binding and office supplies stayed the same. They're pretty much self-explanatory. Out of then in-state travel meetings, out of this budget line comes our dues for courses, workshops, and seminars that are vital to the assessors, clerks, and board members in the department to stay abreast of the latest legal changes in Mass General Law and procedures and requirements. Every year, the professional meetings and dues for the MAAO and the Essex County Assessors Association goes up. A year ago, we filled the vacant position of assistant assessor with the hiring of Jim Hall. In order to hold this position, he must obtain his MAAO designation by attending courses and workshops. The clerks and the assessors with designations must also attend these meetings to keep our designation standing as members. And then the last is the CIP request. The assessing department requests EV hybrid vehicle to be shared and utilized by the assessors to perform daily field work. Currently, our monthly stipends pay for gas, which do not factor in mileage and wear and tear to the personal vehicles. Also, parking can be difficult with tourists and garage renovations and capacity limits that hinder the productivity of the staff. We have calls from concerned residents and the police department to confirm our assessors are actually in the neighborhood. Even so, the assessors have accumulated parking tickets from meters when inspections have taken longer than expected. At one point in time long ago, the assessing department did have a vehicle. I understand there are other departments that have city vehicles, which probably are not used every day as the assessors use their own personal vehicles. This request will not only save time and elevate productivity, but it will also provide a sense of security and trust within the community as we strive to meet our tasks and goals that keep the city running. In conclusion, overall, outside of the CIP request, the assessing the budget has increased slightly due to change in market and inflation and from the addition of the former CIP programs into our contract services line. The assessing department is tasked with many duties, all of which factor down to calculating the tax amount the city can levy to support the budget that's approved. Thank you.
Thank you. So I did notice that the fringe benefit, the mileage reimbursement had decreased quite a bit. And so it seems like the request for an additional vehicle is the reason for that, right? We're looking to move people out of using their personal vehicles into potentially using a vehicle that's going to be purchased by the department. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate. And I think there's some repurposing of some vehicles that the city owns that is being looked at for this.
Yes, but are you benefiting from one of those vehicles, or are you requesting money to purchase a vehicle?
I'm benefiting from one of those vehicles.
Chair, if I could just provide some clarification. It's reflected in the capital plan in that the capital plan should reflect all sort of asset management investments. And so because the vehicle was repurposed, the assessing department, based on that plan, will have access to that vehicle to work toward meeting the needs that the assessor has laid out tonight.
So what is the capital request paying for?
It's in the capital plan, but there isn't a specific capital vote associated with it. It's the plan is reflecting the asset being reallocated within the plan.
How many assessors are doing field work, are actually out conducting this work?
2 every day.
Okay. And so we're talking about one vehicle that's being repurposed to the department?
They'll be sharing it.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I could add some further clarification, my understanding is that I believe the plan is for there to be a pool, for lack of a better term, of some vehicles that are available for certain departments to use that go out into the field on a regular basis. And so we're working to determine how to operationalize that under the new administration's leadership to finalize that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this is really where I should be directing the question. I mean, do you have a sense, Mayor Bungalo, of how many actual field agents are supposed to be drawing on this pool of vehicles that we're distributing to the city, and how that offsets the number of personal vehicles that are being used? I mean, you've been with us for the past several days, so you've heard me ask the question, like, why aren't we giving out parking passes to the people doing this work? Like, why is it necessary for them to be accruing parking tickets? It seems like an eminently solvable problem.
Oh, this is one of the instances where I would refer to the former acting mayor. This was a plan developed by that administration, repurposing the get-around vehicles. So I don't have information for you immediately in hand about the number of employees in which department would be benefiting from these vehicles, but we can get that for you.
Okay. I just don't want us to end up in a situation where I mean, repurposing the vehicles makes sense to me if they're not being utilized, but I don't want to end up in a situation where we repurpose the vehicles, take on the cost of maintenance and gas and mileage and repair, and still have city staff getting parking tickets because there's still not enough vehicles for them, right? So that would be helpful information, I think, to have to bring some context to this conversation. Councilor Hapworth.
Mr. Chair. I don't know if I think I just might not understand what the $57,000 is for. Can you explain that again?
The $57,000 was the initial estimate presented by the department when requesting a vehicle. In light of the fact that there are vehicles available under the previous acting mayor's plan that can be repurposed, the cost is reflecting what it would have cost to obtain the vehicle, but the effort of the capital plan is to provide a fully robust sort of 30,000 foot perspective on what assets are allocated where. And so the cost was left in there to demonstrate that there was a request for a certain amount of money for a vehicle, and the vehicle is being provided, but there isn't an associated vote associated with that $57,000. I hope that makes sense. I can rethink how that gets presented in future years when assets have been reallocated amongst departments, but it was maintaining that there was a request that was made by the department for a certain type of vehicle. And that vehicle has been accommodated, but not through a specific purchase, but through a savings elsewhere.
Got it. Okay. I think that makes sense. And then I think I just need to also understand the request for the vehicle. So I guess in my mind, employees are driving to work, parking their car somewhere, and then getting into a city car, and then driving that and parking that somewhere else. In my mind, you should probably be parking legally anyway. So where are the parking tickets coming from? And would the city not ticket a city vehicle? Is that how that works? Is that a policy? To Councilor McLean's point, it seems like a solvable problem that wouldn't require us to purchase a vehicle that's going to sit somewhere for half the day and then be used other parts of the day. So I'm just trying to understand the logic behind that.
My understanding, and I think the traffic and parking team in the police department may be best to help inform this conversation, but this has been something that's been looked at multiple years, but I do believe because of the permit parking requirements in certain neighborhoods, I think we were challenged to determine what type of pass would be applicable in all instances, and also to just ensure that there are never misuse of passes and not to assume that something like that would ever happen. And my understanding is that if it's an officially marked vehicle, that is something that if someone's going around in reviewing the parked vehicles in that neighborhood would recognize someone's here on official city business. Additionally, to Assessor Cortez's point about these are folks coming up to someone's door asking to enter their home, and there's no official looking vehicle in the neighborhood. And so having an official vehicle parked just outside when someone's coming up to be asked to let into your home, we think is also an important consideration for members of the community to see this is indeed someone who is from the city and not something else happening. And so I do think that there are complexities related to the parking passes, but also it's that additional layer of ensuring comfort to be let into someone's home.
Yeah, I think I just need to think on that for a little bit longer because in my mind, it seems like this is a perception issue that we're spending $57,000 on and adding, I guess, in some way, adding a vehicle to the city fleet. I'm just having a hard time swallowing that logic as a reason for why we need to purchase a new vehicle.
And I think this is on me having caused confusion. It's no additional new purchase. It's one of the get around vehicles that was already purchased. It was just reflecting that the department's ask, what the value of that ask was. And it's reflecting that that ask was satisfied through the repurposing of the get around vehicle. And so there's no new money that's being spent for it. And that vehicle has been added to a pool so that I think we're working on figuring out how the departments, so if the assessors need to go out from 9 to 12, and then if another department, maybe inspectional services needed the vehicle from 12 to 2, they could take it out. And what we have to, I believe, and figure out operationally is how we're going to set that up so that I don't want to necessarily use this word, but almost like a zip car model for staff so they can take it out, is what I understand the acting mayor's former acting mayor's vision was for those repurposing those vehicles.
Sorry, I'm jumping in again. To your comment about how this could be better clarified. So as I'm looking through the CIP, the way I'm mentally clarifying this is I'm looking at the funding source, right? And understanding that some of these funding sources we're going to be taking direct votes on, like the bond order, and that is real money that we are going to be drawing on versus the other that is kind of listed for this vehicle, which is not something that we're going to vote on and appropriating funds for. Is that a fair?
Perfect. Yes.
So that's kind of how I've been looking at that, but I do think it's fair to digest the fact that even in the transference of assets, you're transferring responsibility for these assets, right? And so there will be some real costs associated with maintenance of these fleets for the folks who are using them and for the city as a whole. I want to pick up on the question of assessors who are approaching people's doors. What are we giving them to identify themselves when they are going out into a neighborhood and knocking on somebody's door? I mean, somebody's not going to drive a vehicle from door to door to door. They're going to park and they're going to canvass a neighborhood. So when one of your staff does approach a home and says, I need to conduct this city business, do they have particular clothing? Do they have an ID? Like, what do they have that lets them represent themselves appropriately?
Yes, we do have IDs that are issued by the police department. And we go out and we make sure that we show our IDs when we're knocking on the doors. A lot of the time, when we're in neighborhoods and we're parking our cars and just walking to, house to house to house, neighbors are looking outside their windows and they're seeing where we're coming from. We've had people come out and record going into their personal vehicles and then, calling to making sure and before they leave, stay here, let me call and make sure you who you say you are. So yeah, that it will definitely help with that. But yes, we do have IDs that we do show that are issued by the police department with our pictures.
Okay, excellent. And believe me, I relate. It is door knocking season coming up yet again. I get it. Okay. Counselor Stott.
Thank you. I had one quick question and one comment. So I think we've discussed this before. My day job is a national company that does property inspections as well. Fully support the use of a marked car because I'm assuming a lot of your inspections are also drive-by.
Yeah.
Where the inspector doesn't get out of the car and just drives by and takes a photo. We've had a lot of issues with that in other parts of the country, but I would definitely support that for safety as well. My question is about the board, actually. Could you explain to me what the role is on the assessor board and what their responsibilities are? I'm mostly asking just because they have the highest line item salary-wise of any of our board members.
Yeah. So we have a 3-member board. And they, by law, they're the ones who sign off on the commitments that are issued from the assessing department to the collectors department to have them actually collect, give them the go ahead to collect the funds. They also are the party that's responsible for going over our abatements. So we process the abatements and we present it to them and we show them everything with the facts and our inspections and our data changes. If there's any, they have questions for us, they ask us. It almost keeps us in line as a check and balance in a way in that aspect when it comes down to abatements. And we have a former assessor who's also on the board too. So it helps with the functionality of keeping the procedures and requirements in line with what the assessing department is built for.
Counselor Merkel.
Thank you, Chair McLean. Yes, I had a couple of questions too about the vehicles being repurposed for your workers. You said that they go out, two of them go out every day. Yes. Oh, okay. So I really agree with your concerns about the vehicle having an identity, being identified as a city vehicle along with the ID. I think it would be problematic. I really appreciated Councilor Stott's comment about sometimes you're not even going there and in this day and age. And also it's their identity of their personal vehicle. Also, generally, if they're going out that much in their own vehicles, I mean, often people get reimbursed then for gas and the wear and tear on their vehicle. So am I assuming that they're not?
We have a stipend that's for the gas that doesn't account for the wear and the tear, pop tires, anything like that.
Okay, so that's a consideration in my mind as well, that they're using their own vehicle for work. And I think workers,
Or parking tickets, not to interrupt you.
yeah. So I think workers, shouldn't be responsible for that. Even my old days as a nanny using my vehicle, everything was, was reimbursed, and it sounds like it's only gas. So that's also wear and tear on somebody's vehicle if they're using it that much. So I just want to express that I understand and support all that reasoning that you've presented.
Counselor Marcelo.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to talk a little bit about the software that you purchased. I'm really happy to see that it's been successful. Do you know if it's been successful in other departments as well?
Yes, other departments call me up and they say, we have another user, in our staff that wants to use this. Is it possible? And it is, we have a limited amount of users that we can set up. And so we're constantly being called to ask, can we, have someone else join to use this program, because it's been beneficial to these departments for their needs. So fire, when they're looking at, how to get into the building, they can see different areas. And this is flyovers that happen 3 times per year. So you're seeing the latest and greatest. It's not like Google Earth where it was like 2 years ago or whatever. And then you have the planning department when they want to know, for engineering, how to, what's the best route for like a rotary or, school buses, when they need to take that into effect.
So let me ask you this: when you get the images back,
Yeah.
What's the process then that you have to do yourself, or any user? What do you have to do?
There's nothing that we have to do. So it's updated all on the site itself. So they have a username and a password. And
So are you telling me the software does the comparisons from the previous flight?
okay, so there's near map and there's pushpin. Pushpin identifies the differences in the images taken by near map. The other departments have access to near map, So the images of the flyover, they don't have access to the push pin, which is the AI generated differential between flyover to flyover. So they're using the images only. They're not using the portion that has the detection.
Oh,
So they can.
I thought that the conservation agent was going to be able to use that to see the differences.
So they can see the differences because what you could do is you can change. There's like a little tab that said, you go from flyover to flyover, and so you see how the image changes, but they don't have the push pin one. The push pin one is the one that's specifically for the assessing department that just shows this person built a new in-ground pool with a addition and a deck onto it, and it color codes that out for that specific purpose and reason. So they can still see it if they're looking at a particular property. They just click on a button and they can see the image change from one to another, but they don't get the one that's like, this one changed, that one changed, this one changed.
So Pushpin will provide some sort of a report that will give you
Yes.
a list of properties that have
Yes.
changed, and does it also know what the changes are? or is
Yes.
it just like, wow, okay. Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair McLean, to you. You are probably the most misunderstood and, excuse me, underrated department. I want to talk about the major changes that trigger new assessments. You talked about, renovations, additions, pools, whatever. I know that in 2014, when we went from, 13 to 70 solar arrays, that triggered a lot of, assessments under the previous assessor. And you talked about lack of permits. So do you, if you realize that there's a lack of permit on something that required one, are you notifying inspectional services?
So we research to see if there is permits taken out before we, just assume that there isn't. And then we call over and we say, hey, this one has an addition on it. Possibly, was it a clerical error? Did you guys put it on a wrong house that it shouldn't have been put on or whatever? So we just ask that question anyways, just to make sure that it wasn't put on the wrong house. So they're aware based on that.
Great. So another thing on the energy efficiency side. So there's going to be hopefully a lot more full house conversions of air source heat pumps, which would, significant increase in the value to the property. Is inspectional services, because that 100% of the time requires a permit, usually an electric and maybe a building, sometimes both. Would they be notifying you because you may not see that with your software?
So we have access to the permitting system and we run reports for that. We send out letters for building permits before we do any kind of knock on doors. So we allow them, the time to call us back and schedule an inspection for any kind of permits that were taken out. So for that we do. For the most part, it's when it comes down to that, it really comes down to sales. So the sales really will dictate what houses with those new features are selling for. And from there, we follow the market. So we raise or lower based on that. So that's really how the assessments are determined when it comes down to upgrades like that.
Okay, seeing nothing further. Counselor Hepworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move to approve the personnel budget in the amount of 366,047 and the expenditures budget in the amount of 70,885 for grand total of 436,932.
Counselor Hepworth moves to recommend approval of the assessor's personnel budget in the amount of $366,047, expenditures in the amount of $70,885 for a total of $436,932. Counselor Hepworth. Counselor Merkel.
Yes.
Counselor Stott,
Yes.
and Counselor Watson Felt.
Yes.
I am also a yes. That's 5-4, 0 against. The matter carries.
I just want to say thank you so much for your questions and your comments. Appreciate it.
Thank you for the information and for being here. Moving on to our treasurer. I think this is one of my favorite sessions so far. One of our core administrative services for our city on deck tonight.
Hello, my name is Kristen Lindberg, and I am the treasurer for the city of Salem.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. So the primary function of the treasurer's office is to preserve, protect, and manage the financial resources of the city by means of receiving and dispersing funds. So basically, the treasurer's office takes in every single dollar that the city makes, and they spend every single dollar the city has to spend, whether it's to vendors, payroll. We're also responsible for safeguarding these funds and maximizing the interest on these funds, whether it's from moving, checking interest rates, moving from bank to bank, or moving the funds within the same bank but from one type of account to another, like from an MMA account that's getting 4% to a 6-month CD that's getting 6.5%. It's hard to move banks. Usually when bank knows that you're going to move, they'll offer to match, the interest rate of what you're going to get. So it's usually moving the funds within the same bank, but from different types of accounts. We also oversee the tax, title, and foreclosure process, which from start to finish is everything from identifying properties that are behind in their taxes and working closely with the tax title attorneys to put liens on the properties, and efforts for collection, sending out letters, phone calls, whatnot. Hopefully collecting all the money that's in arrears on these properties instead of moving forward with land court and foreclosure, which we tried to avoid, but it does happen. I'm fairly new here. I've only been here for a few months, so I'm not sure when the last public auction was, but that is something that I'm going to be looking into in FY24. Again, it's kind of a bittersweet process. You don't want to foreclose, but then again, we got to get these properties back on the tax roll. So we also the treasurer's office also works closely with finance to negotiate short and long-term borrowing. We also work closely with HR to get payroll out the door every week. About it. Any questions on that piece? No? Okay, so for the goals and objectives, it was hard for me to put together a comprehensive list of goals and objectives because I started working on this budget literally 1 week after I walked in the door. So I had no real history, and so it was really hard. One thing that did kind of jump out at me was the cash management software that we're using is pretty antiquated. It's not supported. There's no tech support. It's a little glitchy. It makes me a little nervous. So that's one of my big goals for FY24 is upgrading the software. To not only get the tech support we need, but to also to preserve the data that we already have. So that's one of my big goals. I'm sure there's a lot more, but like I said, I'm kind of learning as I go here, so I will work with Anna to implement as we go along. Staffing changes for FY '24 in this department. I am very hopeful that we will be fully staffed for the first time in 6 or 7 months. We did just finally hire a deputy treasurer who will be starting on Monday. I have high hopes. He has a lot of ledger experience, a lot of banking experience, which are the two key, things I was looking for in making a hiring decision. I do want to take the opportunity, since I have all of your attention, to just give a shout out to the 2 staff members that have been there, working double and triple time to kind of pull, this all together and make sure that the work is getting done and processed, and they've really been great. So that would be the payroll coordinator, Caroline Nye, and the principal clerk, Elaine Cook. They're amazing team players. They've really, really come through, and they've been very patient during the transition and helping to answer all of my questions. I was trying to look back on the recent accomplishments. Again, it's hard because I wasn't there, but based on conversations I've had with my predecessor, I feel like payroll is one of the key points that she kept mentioning with the implementation of Munis version 2021. We are able and will be able to make to streamline the payroll process, which is very important because there's just where the city payroll is weekly, there's no break, there's no breathing time in between, running the payrolls. So the process has been streamlined, and there's still a little bit more room for improvement there with the payroll. So I feel like that's been one of the big accomplishments that Treasurer's Office has seen in FY '23. Any questions before we look at the numbers? So just to jump in right to the general administrative expenses, pretty much everything is the same except for 2 lines, which would be the tax foreclosure line and the credit card fee line. Tax foreclosure line, you'll see that it went down by 7,200, which was 100% of the budget. We took that out because that is not really a city expense. Right. So we're going to be moving that to a revolving fund. Basically, what this expense represents is money that we've collected from taxpayers that we're now paying out to attorneys. So it's not really a city expense. The money kind of flows through the city. So we're moving it into a revolving fund to show all the ins and outs, and hopefully it'll be, everything that comes in should go out. The next biggest change was the credit card fees. You can see that we've reduced the budget by $40,000 going forward. These fees are generated mostly from parking and permitting revenues. For everybody, who pays pay by play or the passports, thank you. Passports in the parking garages and the kiosks and the meters. This all the credit card money that comes in, we're either charged a percentage by the merchant, or even some merchants charge by transaction. It's really hard to judge or how to predict how much parking revenue we're going to take in. A lot of it depends on the summertime and the tourism and you can't, the weather and so many other factors. So, but looking at the trends, going back, I don't know where FY '23's number came from or how that was calculated, but I think it was a little high. So I feel comfortable after doing a complete analysis 10 times that we can lower that expenditure by 40 grand. So that's what we've done. Yeah.
to give a quick kudos to Kristen. I think she was here maybe 2 to 3 weeks and I went to her and said, hey, do you think we can get those credit card fees down in the budget because we're looking for savings? And she spent many, many hours going through that to find a place that would be comfortable so that we could identify these savings for the budget next year. So kudos to Kristen.
Okay, moving on here now to, yeah, that's it for,
So why don't we pause? Why don't we pause in general admin and we'll see if there's any questions before we get into fixed costs. Counselor Stott?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Great synopsis for only jumping right in. A question about the credit card fees, something that has always kind of irked me, and you probably won't have an answer tonight. It's more of a philosophical question, but when a user uses the Passport app, for example, the fee is paid for by the city, I believe. But when the user goes to salem.com to pay like a water bill or a utility bill by credit card, the payee pays the fee. So I don't quite understand why we've made that decision.
I don't either. I mean, that's something that was made, a decision that was made by a prior administration. We can certainly pass the fees off onto the citizen or the payer. That's a decision, that will have to be made on how we want to handle that going forward. But yes, I agree. Some fees are absorbed by the city and some fees are paid by the person whose credit card is being charged.
If I may, thank you. I will just add my own 2 cents. See what I did there? I I personally, I think the online bill pay should not have the fee passed on to the payee. It's always irked me that it does. That's all.
Sometimes, yeah, we could do like for the online processing, if we, the e-checks, maybe we could absorb the fee and then pass on the credit card fees or vice versa or something, to make it like, yeah, they're pretty high, the credit card fees. I agree. But people still will use their credit card to get those miles. So sometimes it kind of, it's okay to them.
I mean, there is a bit of a rub there, I have to say, having just paid my water sewer bill. When you do the e-check, there is no fee. When you use your card, there is a fee. So even as a user, it's not always equitable depending on what you're able to take access to. And with the Passport app, I recall us having conversations about moments where, residents were free in this particular location at a certain time, and you as the payee are still paying a fee even when it's free. And then the city may be paying a transaction fee on the others. So like there's something wonky that happens there where the merchant gets paid coming and going no matter what happens.
Yeah, we can definitely look into that and, sorry.
Mayor Pagano?
Just gonna say we could look into that. When we say the city pays for it, it's us. We're basically saying Salem property taxpayers are paying for it. So there is a degree to which the people that pay the parking meters, for example, are some residents, a lot not residents. So by the city subsidizing these fees, we're asking the taxpayers to subsidize costs that is to the benefit of, not entirely, but to a certain extent, non-residents. And that's not true so much with the water bills, for example, by definition.
Councilor Merkel.
Thank you, Chair McLean. Yes, just from my own understanding, it's not an opinion about it, but that's a really good point. We want to make sure we're not subsidizing visitors in that way. But in my understanding is credit cards, both sides, as you said, get charged. When you use a credit card. But so let's say if we were passing that credit card fee on to our visitors, what does that look like? Does that mean like if we post parking is $1 an hour, but then when they pay for their credit card, they'd get charged, $1 and 3% of that? Is that what that would look like? So then
definitely have to look into that a little bit more, because there is a transaction fee for using the parking app. It's 15 cents or something every time you park, but as far as the actual credit card charge fees themselves, yeah, we're definitely gonna have to look into that a little bit more.
Okay, because it would be, like I said, I do support the concept. I just wonder how it would be, how confusing it would end up. You know, it's because I know sometimes businesses will say, oh, they'll frame it as a 3% discount if you pay with a debit card, or they'll frame it as an extra fee. So it just can be confusing. Thank you.
Okay, seeing nothing further on general admin, Counselor Hapworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move to approve the personnel budget in the amount of 287,908 and the expenditures budget in the amount of 127,101 for a grand total of 415,900.
Counselor Hapworth moves to recommend approval of the Treasurer General Admin Personnel Budget in the amount of 287,908, expenditures in the amount of 127,101 for a total of $415,009. Seconded by Counselor Stott. Counselor Hapworth. Counselor Merkel.
Yes.
Counselor Stott.
Yes.
Counselor Watson-Felt.
Yes.
I am also a yes. 5-4, 0 against. That carries. We'll move into fixed costs.
So moving on to general fund debt service. Let's see. So for the long-term debt, principal and interest, you'll see that we have zeroed out a whole bunch of lines here on the budget, and we've kind of rolled everything up into two lines, principal and interest. This is just for simplicity, just so you can see the bottom line. We will still have the breakdown of these two lines and the supporting schedules included. Are they attached to? Yeah, they're attached in the budget book. They're just not here in this same position, same place. We just wanted to focus on the bottom line. Yep. So sorry.
Just to follow up, the long-term debt service represents the payments that the city is obligated to make for projects that have been previously authorized. And these are based on the schedules that we get working with our financial advisors that assist with putting together the amortization schedules. And just to echo what Kristen was saying, it's best practice to actually have one principal line and one interest line and then supporting schedules. It's actually very administratively burdensome to have all of the lines in the budget laid out this way when we process the payments. And so this is to make it a much more efficient process internally.
Where's the best place to locate that schedule in the budget book?
It is in section 6, I want to say. It's under the entire, like our debt book schedules are in there that show the payments by month. It's actually broken down even further that by this. It has more detail on the, not full descriptions necessarily of the projects, but it has longer descriptions for the projects. It shows the monthly payments for principal and interest for each project. So that we felt this was also duplicating information elsewhere in the budget and was creating, it seemed a little bit hard to sort of assess what was actually in the debt portfolio in terms of the appropriation line.
So for the short-term debt, which is basically, oh.
It's okay. We're doing it together. It's fine.
And the long-term debt, I just had up, is on page 510, which should be immediately behind the general admin in the same tab in the page 510.
Got that pretty easy. What I was flipping pages for was trying to locate the schedules that pertain to the first few lines I happened to see, which were the school lines.
Oh, apologies. I can, bear with me one moment. I can give you the exact page numbers.
I'm looking in I'm looking in financial forecast plans and policies, which seems to have a lot of the aggregate debt service included in it.
The long-term debt service by month, I believe, starts on page 262 in tab 6 in when I say tab 6, big tab 6, color-coded tab 6. And I think it's about 80 pages worth of debt schedules in there for anyone that is
Yeah, there's quite a bit.
inclined.
It's quite a bit. Big tabs and little tabs. Have we expressed our gratitude for this giant book? I think we have. Thanks for this giant book. Okay, does anybody have any actual questions about the long-term debt service? Counselor Hapworth?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to approve the long-term debt in the amount of $8,560,828.
Counselor Hapworth motions to recommend approval of long-term debt service in the amount of $8,560,828. Seconded by Counselor Stott. Counselor Hapworth,
Yes.
Counselor Merkel,
Yes.
Counselor Stott, and Counselor Watson Feltz.
Yes.
I am also a yes, 5-4, against. That carries. Move on to the short-term debt service.
Okay, for the short-term debt, this is debt that we borrow for short term, usually less than a year. It's borrowed to fund immediate project costs without interrupting like the regular cash flow. So we borrow this temporarily until we put more permanent financing through, which would be the long-term debt. One thing that I wanted to point out here, and you will see almost a $300,000 decrease in the short-term debt, which is amazing. Anna and I did some research and analysis on this and found that a lot of the lease payments for both the streetlight conversion and some of the vehicle leases had been paid in full. And so we were able to just completely take those off and hopefully not renew those. So that's a big decrease there. It for the short term, I could say it.
Just to potentially add a point of clarification on the lease payments, the comments that are in there, I don't think have been updated for a couple of years. And so that's why it looks like it's saying principal payment 1 of 3 and principal payment year 5 of 7. Should actually say principal payment 3 of 3 and principal payment 7 of 7, which is when we confirmed that that was my happiest day this spring.
I mean, I love to see numbers go down in the budget. I will say that just looking at this relative to the last section, that the budget lines in here are much more digestible. Right? It's much easier to look at these and get a sense of what we're actually paying for than it was in the long-term debt where it's like heavily coded. I know that's something that sort of happens early in the process, but it would be great to see those become more digestible too. Seeing no questions or comments, Councilor Hapworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to approve the short-term debt service in the amount of $280,503.
Councilor Hapworth motions to recommend approval of the short-term debt service expenditure in the amount of $280,503, seconded by Councilor Stott. Councilor Hapworth.
Yes.
Councilor Merkel.
Yes.
Councilor Stott. Councilor Watson Felt.
Yes.
I am also a yes, 5-4 against. That carries. 6 tech and vocational assessment.
Yes, so the tech assessment is based off of a number of enrollees, which I have not had a chance to see what the current year enrollees are. However, the amount billed is what is shown here, and as you can see, compared to last year, it has decreased by 35. but has basically remained at about 2.5 for the last 2 years.
Seeing no questions or comments about that, Counselor Hepworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to approve the Essex Tech and Vocational Assessment in the amount of $2,565,518.
Counselor Hepworth motions to recommend approval of the Essex Tech and Voc Assessment expenditures in the amount of $2,565,518. Seconded by Counselor Stott. Counselor Hepworth.
Yes.
Counselor Merkel.
Yes.
Counselor Stott.
Yes.
Counselor Watson Felt.
Yes.
I'm also a yes, 5-4. The matter carries.
Okay.
Cherry sheet.
Cherry sheets, let's see. The cherry sheet assessments, those did go up quite a bit for the schools mostly, school choice and charter schools. The assessments are paid as an offset to the revenue. Let's see. So yeah, so that's gonna show as a 400, almost 500,000 just on the schools side, the increase on the schools. Yes, please do.
And just to add one note here, the state assessments that are reflected in this budget proposal are preliminary numbers because the state is not yet finalized their FY24 budget. And so we won't get fully finalized state assessment numbers until over the summer. Whatever they are, we are obligated to pay them. And so typically what we do is we budget the more conservative numbers that we get from the state. Usually they're somewhat consistent between the governor, the House, and the Senate. Sometimes they vary a little bit. And so that's just a note that if one were to compare exactly what was in the budget for 23 and what we ultimately pay at the end of the year, there might be some slight differences based on how things came together with the final budget for any given year. And this is also just to flag where I think during the school's budget presentation, there were some notes about the level state aid. And while the Chapter 70 on the revenue side looked great, the charter reimbursement was created a challenging dynamic on that side.
Counselor Morcillo.
Thank you, Chair. I had a lot of questions here just because I need to understand more about what these are for. So I did notice that the special ed went way down. What is that actually for?
I brought my cherry sheet manual with me because every year there are certain ones of these that no matter how many times I read them, they won't lodge in my brain. So for the special education, that reimbursement I believe is based off of the number of students. Bear with me one second while I find. This is one of the ones I look at all the time. Apologies. Just want to make sure I'm giving you the exact definition of this and not what is in my memory. Suppose I can explain up the top of my head. So this this is to reimburse the state for providing special needs education to children enrolled in state hospital schools. So the formula is the cost that each municipality is charged is the average per pupil cost of education within the school district multiplied by the full-time equivalent of resident pupils served by the state. And current year charges are for pupils served in the prior school year. There's a little bit more detail, but that's the overall formula. And the formulas for most of these are very wonky. But that is, yeah, so it's the number of pupils and then charged by the cost that, and the change in the cost would impact the assessment that we have. So, okay, yep, we can break it down.
So we had fewer students in this position last year, and that's why the assessment went down?
My Assumption is yes, in that the cost of each, I would have to go back and check and see what the backup is that they have for that I can go online and dig into the sheet, but I won't be able to do that quickly right now. But if it is the cost that we are charged, the average pupil cost of education, which of course that has only gone up, multiplied by the FTE equivalent of resident pupils served by the state, that must have gone down. Because otherwise, I don't know how the formula would work otherwise, but I will go in and check the detail on that and confirm that with you.
Okay. The RMV non-renewal surcharge, I guess that's what that is.
So basically, when we send out excise tax bills every year, for those who don't pay, after, I think it's 30 days, we do what's called a mark with the Registry of Motor Vehicles, and we charge them $20. That mark is paid directly to the Registry of Motor Vehicles, but then paid back to the city on the through the cherry sheets, or adjusted on the cherry sheets, I should say. So, let's see.
Yeah, so and this is actually something that the collector mentioned in her presentation related to what's called the mark. That can be so the upcoming fiscal year actual assessments are based on the non-renewal obligations cleared in the prior fiscal year. So the ones that are cleaned up, the obligations cleared in the current fiscal year, maybe from markings from several fiscal years. And so it's not always a just 1 year look back, it can be multiple years. And so basically whatever's clearing, that's what we're then paying back because that money came to us and we need to return that. Yeah, the municipality collects a $20 surcharge per violation for non-payment. And then, so when the collector was mentioning that the types of things that they collect, she mentioned that they collect this $20 surcharge, which is called the marking for non-payment. That surcharge then provides the municipality, this enables the municipality to offset the $20 charge per marking assessed by the RMV. So it's intended to be a net neutral for the municipality, but so the person who's not paying, though, they are ultimately charged that fee. We take that in because they didn't, it's not intended for us to retain the funds. It's more intended to go to the RMV, basically.
So $20 is what you're saying.
Yeah.
So if we divide that number by $20, that's the number of people that did not pay their excise tax?
So if somebody who hasn't had their license for 5 years because they were non-renewable because of the marks, comes in and says, all right, I got to clean up all my old excise tax bills, so I can get my license. I have a new job. I need my license. I need to be able to. These fees can go back decades.
Okay.
So we could be collecting fees from 1990, 2000, so it's very hard to, we can't say these, what is it, 100 and, where'd the fees goes? Or 20,000, 18,000, sorry. The 18,000, oh, it was 137. It was a change of 18,000. So the $137,000 in fees doesn't represent one specific fiscal year. It could represent, like I said, decades of collection, collections, very sporadic. It's hard to keep track of, but
So you're just
it's done through
reimbursing them for their money that.
we've collected. Yes, I'm sorry, I said that backwards earlier.
That's okay.
It's not what they've collected paying to us, it's what we've collected and are paying out to the registry. Mhm.
So, and I don't know if you can do this, but the two school related ones, the out of district and the charter school, you can't really look at those numbers and determine whether there's more kids because the assessments may have increased, right, per student?
Yes. So that's the charter one, I think, is probably the most complicated out of all of these. The charter school formula, it's not necessarily that there are more kids, it's where they are, because the formula is the 100 for the first year, 60 for the second year, 40% the third year. And because I believe the city's seats are capped, and so technically there really should be a stable number of students enrolled in charter schools. It just depends on what that cycle is with students cycling through the formula. And so I think it's likely appropriate to assume it's a stable number of students, but it's both the underlying foundation budget increasing, which we have to then pass along, and then just where they are in their education year.
But the out-of-district one is based on,
That one does appear to be based entirely on, is a much cleaner formula than the charter school assessment.
yeah. I just wonder if you could maybe provide a little bit more data with those two, since it
Sure.
is like I think that those also are used a lot when people throw around numbers about students leaving the
Yeah.
district. And
Oh.
yeah, I don't know how you would do it for the charter schools, but there's got to be a way to do that, that we're at our cap or we're below the cap, whatever, how many students are choosing to go there.
And I just realized I sort of explained this thinking on the revenue side, because that's where my brain goes automatically, but on the chart, on the actual assessment side, that one, it doesn't matter on the assessments, it's more on the revenue reimbursement side where it matters where we are in the step down formula, but on the assessment side, it is number of students. It doesn't matter where they are in the step down, it's number of students. However, and this requires more research on my end because I've actually had some questions on this. It appears sometimes that the state, I've had questions about how they're snapshotting the enrollment numbers, because technically one would assume that the budgets presented by the governor, the House and the Senate all would be using the same enrollment snapshots. So there wouldn't be a reason necessarily for the assessment number to change, but it has changed through each iteration this year. It changed, it does toggle a bit. And so I do have some questions and research to do on my end to understand a little bit more why that component is toggling if we are using the same snapshot of students. So I can certainly do some research on that and figure out how we might better reflect that in a budget document.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing nothing further on the cherry sheet. Counselor Epworth,
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the state assessments budget in the amount of 10,352.2.
Counselor Hepworth moves to recommend approval of the state assessments expenditures in the amount of 10,352,002. Seconded by Counselor Stott. Counselor Hepworth.
Yes.
Counselor Merkel.
Yes.
Counselor Stott.
Yes.
Counselor Watson-Feld.
Yes.
I am also a yes. That's 5 in favor. The matter carries. State will get theirs. Contributory retirement.
So for the retirement expenditures, we currently have 1,088 active employees contributing and 748 retired collecting. The total amount this year is that we budgeted is for FY24 is 14.9. This has gone up 3.5% from prior years, and I think it's pretty standard every year.
I can add a little bit to this. So the appropriation request for the contributory retirement is based off of the funding schedule in order to achieve full funding, currently projected to be 2032. The funding schedule goes up 5.5% annually. The reason the request in front of you is 3.5% is that upon further evaluation, reviewing the appropriation, there are areas in the budget where we are able to charge associated fringe costs. For example, the North Shore WIB employees that are technically they're paid through the city, but they are technically not. The city is not obligated to be paying for their retirement. They are being paid off in federal grants, and so we are able to charge portions of the assessment associated with those staff to those grants. And so I did a very deep dive on this to find a more accurate representation of what the obligation would be next year, just to make sure that we weren't turning back funds unnecessarily at the end of FY24.
Thank you for that. Seeing no questions or comments, Counselor Hepworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to approve the contributory retirement budget for the amount of $14,930,794.
Counselor Hepworth moves to recommend approval of the contributory retirement budget in the total of $14,930,794. Seconded by Counselor Stott. Counselor Hepworth.
Yes.
Counselor Merkel.
Yes.
Counselor Stott. Counselor Watson Felt.
Yes.
I'm also a yes. It's 5 in favor. The matter carries.
And then I'll assist Kristen with the non-contributory pensions because I'm not sure that she's familiar with this yet. This is currently for one individual that was grandfathered into an arrangement where the city is paying the full cost for their retirement. And so this has been a stable appropriation for the last several years, and we're anticipating the same cost for 24.
Seeing no questions or comments, Counselor Hepworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to recommend approval of the non-contributory pensions budget in the amount of $10,625.
Counselor Hepworth recommends approval of the non-contributory pensions budget in the total amount of $10,625, seconded by Counselor Stott. Counselor Hepworth. Counselor Merkel.
Yes.
Counselor Stott. Counselor Watson Felt.
Yes.
I'm also a yes. 5 in favor. The matter carries. Medicare.
So for the Medicare expenditures, this is for the city share of the Medicare contributions. It's basically a match based on the number of employees and their contributions. So from everybody's check, you see you get what you pay out 1.45% in Medicare contributions. The city matches that, pays it in. The number's gone up a little bit this year because we've settled a lot of contracts and we're paying back retro pay. So there's naturally going to be some increases every year on the Medicare.
Counselor Dominguez.
Thank you, Chair McLean. This question might be directed to the new elected mayor. I know you inherited this budget, but do you have any plan to increase your personnel based on these Medicare numbers so the projection can be more accurate?
Not at this time.
It's up to you.
I just elaborate to say, it's premature to say what I'm going to suggest for FY 25, but right now this is the budget that we're dealing with. So this is the personnel levels that we're anticipating.
Seeing nothing further, Counselor Hepworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to recommend approval of the Medicare budget in the amount of $1,382,574.
Counselor Hepworth moves to recommend approval of the Medicare budget in the total of $1,382,574, seconded by Counselor Stott. Counselor Hepworth. Counselor Merkel.
Yes.
Counselor Stott.
Yes.
Counselor Watson Felt.
Yes.
I'm also a yes. That's 5 in favor. The matter carries. Municipal insurance.
This I'm going to defer to Anna.
I can take this one. So this is the non-medical insurance that the city is obligated to provide. So this is for professional liability, property coverage, auto. I think I'm missing a few. And within this also includes any deductibles that we pay out for those coverage lines. There are also similar lines in the water and sewer fund to afford deductibles associated with sewer backups or water main breaks, et cetera. So this is based off of the premium that we receive from Maya, our insurer, and assume some contributions I believe from the school to assist in offsetting the cost because the appropriation is occurring on the city side of the budget. And then we charge that portion back to the school, and they have budgeted consistently with what we reflect in the budget detail for this section.
Seeing no comments or questions, Counselor Hapworth,
Mr. Chair, I'd like to recommend approval of the municipal insurance budget in the amount of 335, 397.
Counselor Hapworth moves to recommend approval of the municipal insurance expenditures budget in the amount of $335,397, which is also the total. Counselor Hapworth,
Yes.
Counselor Merkel,
Yes.
Counselor Stott,
Yes.
Counselor Watson Felt,
Yep.
and I'm a yes. That's 5-4. The matter carries.
I think we're now on to the sewer enterprise fund, as there are several lines in both sewer and water that the treasurer manages. I believe page 826 is the SESD assessment, which I think is the first item. I'm pulling it up myself right now. And I believe that's tab 28. Yes, page 826. So this is the assessment that is paid by the South Essex Sewerage Board for our portion of the costs of operations and maintenance and debt service for the upcoming fiscal year. And there's a formula that they go through, and they provide us with a letter annually that informs us of what their assessment is intended to be based on what the budget that the board there has voted for the upcoming year. And so for next year, our assessment is decreasing almost $62,000.
Seeing no questions or comments. Counselor Hapworth,
Mr. Chair, I'd like to recommend approval of the SESD assessment in the amount of $4,731,615.
Counselor Hapworth recommends approval of the SESD assessment in the amount of $4,731,615, seconded by Counselor Stott. Counselor Hapworth,
Yes.
Counselor Merkel,
Yes.
Counselor Stott, Counselor Watson Felt.
Yes.
I'm also a yes. That carries. Sewer enterprise long-term debt.
So with the sewer debt, this is the long-term debt. Again, that was previously approved capital projects, sewer enterprise fund. We took the same approach here that we did with the general fund, and where we rolled up all the separate projects into one principal line and one interest line. Otherwise, there was no significant increases or decreases for FY24.
Just in case this is helpful for those that are interested, the water and sewer debt is located in the same debt book section in section 6, if folks are interested in looking at that in more detail.
Big tab 6. Okay. Seeing no questions or comments, Counselor Hapworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to recommend approval of the sewer enterprise long-term debt in the amount of $1,722,592.
Counselor Hapworth recommends approval of the sewer long-term debt expenditure in the amount of $1,722,592, seconded by Counselor Stott. Counselor Hapworth,
Yes.
Counselor Merkel,
Yes.
Counselor Stott, Counselor Watson Felt.
Yes.
I'm also a yes. That's 5 in favor. Carries. Sewer enterprise short-term debt.
So with the short-term debt, there was a little bit of an increase, but nothing too outrageous. This debt will also be rolled into long-term debt from FY '24.
I may just add for the committee, something that we're closely monitoring on our end is that our short-term notes that we actually just issued a week and a half ago that will be permanently financed in November. When we issued notes last June, I believe we were getting interest rates around 2%, and the notes we just issued, the rates are up closer to 5%. And so we actually borrowed less, but the interest increased even though we borrowed less. And so that was challenging. And so we'll keep a close eye on that.
And just so I know that I'm reading this correctly, I know we've had some other places in the schedules where lines were artificially separated, for lack of a better word, because of change in text. Is that what's happening here, or are these actual different categories?
That's exactly what's happening.
Seeing no comments or questions, Counselor Hepworth.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to recommend approval of the sewer enterprise short-term debt budget in the amount of $51,414.
Counselor Hepworth recommends approval of the sewer short-term debt in the amount of 51,414, seconded by Counselor Stott. Counselor Hepworth.
Yes.
Counselor Merkel.
Yes.
Counselor Stott. Counselor Watson-Felt.
Yes.
I'm also a yes. That's 5 in favor. That carries. Insurance deduction.
So for the sewer insurance deductions or the deductibles, excuse me, we did increase this number going forward into FY '24 based off of a lot of claims that were put in FY '23. We do need to do a little bit of further analysis on this and find out why the numbers actually doubled. But you know, in all fairness, we had to increase the number to reflect the actual, proposed amounts.
I wish Ray was still here. Ask the question. Seeing no comments or questions right now, Counselor Hepworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to recommend approval of the sewer enterprise insurance deduction in the amount of $10,000.
Counselor Hepworth moves to recommend approval of the sewer enterprise insurance deductible in the amount of $10,000, seconded by Counselor Stott. Counselor Hepworth.
Yes.
Counselor Merkel.
Yes.
Counselor Stott.
Yes.
Counselor Watson-Felt.
Yes.
I'm also a yes. That's 5 in favor. It carries.
Next up in water in tab 29, starting on page 850 is treasurer long-term debt. Page 850.
With the water enterprise long-term debt, following the same rule as we did with sewer and general fund, we're rolling up all the individual projects into 2 lines, principal and interest. All the individual schedules are in the back of the book. I forget what page number they are, but right behind the other ones. They should all be together, right? Yeah.
Seeing no comments or questions, Counselor Hapworth.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to recommend approval of the water enterprise long-term debt in the amount of $2,333,167.
Counselor Hapworth recommends makes a motion to recommend approval of water long-term debt in the amount of $2,333,167, seconded by Counselor Stott. Counselor Hapworth. Counselor Merkel.
Yes.
Counselor Stott. Counselor Watson-Felt.
Yes.
I'm also a yes. That's 5 in favor. The matter carries. Short-term debt.
The short-term debt for the Water Enterprise Fund, you can see that we did borrow an additional 50, I should say, we're going to be paying out an additional 50 in interest. I'm going to let Anna speak on this a little bit.
Just that increase likely it is a large increase compared to last year. The reason it's a significant increase is just because the composition of what was water and what was sewer when we, in terms of the expenditures that have occurred for the relevant projects, happen to skew more water versus sewer. And so when we issue the projects, we allocate those out very specifically, what's sewer and what's water. So that's why this went up a bit more compared to last year. It's just where the project spending happened to occur during a.
Seeing no comments or questions, Counselor Hapworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to recommend approval of the water enterprise short-term debt in the amount of $72,278.
Counselor Hapworth motions to recommend approval of the water enterprise short-term debt in the amount of $72,278, seconded by Counselor Stott. Counselor Hapworth.
Yes.
Counselor Merkel.
Yes.
Counselor Stott.
Yes.
Counselor Watson-Felt.
Yes.
I'm also a yes. That's 5 in favor.
And next up is the Salem Beverly Water Board, Salem Beverly Water Supply Board assessment. And so similarly to the SCSD assessment, the board determines the volume of water supplied to the cities of Salem and Beverly during the 3 years prior to September 30th. And then that establishes the proportion on which the cities then pay for their expenses toward the water board for the upcoming year. And I just noticed that I neglected to update the assessment number in the text, but down below in the chart is the accurate number, a little over 3 million, an increase of just under 4% for next year.
Seeing no comments or questions, Counselor Hapworth.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to recommend approval of the Salem Beverly Water Supply Board assessment in the amount of $3,017,336.
Counselor Hapworth moves to recommend approval of the Salem Beverly Water Supply Board expenditure in the amount of $3,017,336, seconded by Counselor Stott. Counselor Hapworth.
Yes.
Counselor Merkel.
Yes.
Counselor Stott.
Yes.
Counselor Watson-Felt.
Yes.
I'm also a yes. That is 5 in favor.
Yep. So moving on to what I think is the last of the treasurer's budget is the water enterprise insurance deductibles. These two, as you can see, have doubled for FY24, again, due to claims for city at fault water backups. Again, you know, I think Anna and I have to take a really close look and see what happened in FY23. And you know, are we sure that this is going to continue to happen throughout the, you know, FY24?
Seeing no comments or questions, Counselor Hapworth.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to recommend.
Sorry, Chair. Can I ask one question?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Where or are we seeing anywhere on the budget where there might be income recouped from losses if we then go on to seek reimbursement from a failing of a third-party contractor? Where does that appear?
I think that's a great question.
Thanks.
I think it depends. I believe we were just actually looking at this last week, the two of us. I believe it's general fund miscellaneous receipts. But that was the assessment that we looked at. That was the first time I had seen that in my time here. And so we all revenue is general fund revenue unless otherwise stated in statute. So it was allocated to our miscellaneous receipts.
But there's no other tracking that you do in your files to kind of be able to say a loss ended up being a net zero to the city. There's no process for that.
We can certainly look at and see. On my end, I haven't maintained an active tracking of that, but I believe that the former treasurer may have been maintaining some information on that. And so Kristen and I are looking through to determine what's the most effective way to look at this, since it's interesting that we just looked at this the other day. So your point about tracking it, we definitely take that to heart, and we'll ensure that if something isn't happening now, that it is happening going forward.
Yeah, I think that's great. And thanks for validating that. I would suggest so, because I know, especially with water-based losses or water main losses, these are not cheap losses. They are a great cost to the city, and they hit our insurance. So I also know that we do a lot of subcontracting. I think it would be great for the public's level of transparency and awareness to know what kind of work we're doing on their behalf to recoup some of that.
We could potentially put that as a performance measure for next year.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, this time really seeing no questions or comments. Counselor Hapworth.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the water enterprise insurance deductibles in the amount of $5,000.
Counselor Hapworth moves to recommend approval of the water enterprise insurance deductible in the amount of $5,000, seconded by Counselor Stott. Counselor Hapworth.
Yes.
Counselor Merkel.
Yes.
Counselor Stott.
Yes.
Counselor Watson-Felt.
Yes.
I'm also a yes. It's 5 in favor.
I think that's it for me. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Hope you had fun at your first budget hearing with us. Council on Aging, please join us.
Hi, everybody. I'm Teresa Arnold, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm the Council on Aging Director for the City of Salem. Thank you for having me. I think most of you know the gist of what we do, but I'd really like to just read our mission statement really quickly. Mission of the Salem COA is to develop and offer inclusive programs for all seniors 60 and older and younger disabled residents of Salem, regardless of their race, faith, culture, gender identity, or sexuality, that affirm life and independence, challenge creativity, enhance social isolation, and promote spiritual, psychological, and physical wellness. Although most programs and services are offered at the Community Life Center, the Salem Council on Aging is also committed to serving the needs of the homebound, socially isolated, and culturally diverse older adults and younger disabled individuals of Salem. So I really think that says it all. We revised this statement maybe a year and a half ago, I think, to be more in line with being inclusive and looking at the whole community. And I think the board did a good job on redoing this. For those of you who don't know what we do, I think some of the major programs are social services for sure. And I know a lot of you have heard me in the past talk about the great work the social work team did during the pandemic and meeting the needs of the general community, and particularly working with the Board of Health to serve the homebound with vaccinations, and obviously working with the mayor's office and others. But the social workers on a day-to-day basis do things like navigate health insurance. It's a big maze when people are turning 65, but also if people are just looking to make changes. We see most vulnerable. We see people who are being evicted, homeless, on the verge of homelessness. We help people with Social Security and housing applications, working very closely with the Housing Authority here in the city. We identify those who are socially isolated. We refer people to counseling. And our social workers have vast knowledge of all of the social services in the community, Greater North Shore. The social workers are not clinical social workers. They don't offer mental health counseling, but they are your best resource people in town. We also work with AARP each year to offer free tax assistance to elders and others too. Usually it's mostly the seniors. That's in a nutshell of what the social service team does. I wanted to mention along the line of social services, and I didn't put it in for this year, but it's becoming more apparent to me that there will be a need for a mental health clinician going forward. We brought that up at the debate in May. And I think all will agree that due to social isolation and just what's going on in this world, that all populations are in need of more mental health assistance. I would seek next year coming to you at least a part-time mental health clinician at the center. So I just plant that seed now. Transportation is a wonderful service. Salem's a tough city to drive in, as we know. And even though some of our folks still drive, they love our vans. We have a fleet of 6 vans and 8 part-time van drivers. And what a great service. We get people to and fro to the center, primarily to medical appointments. That's very important, and grocery shopping. So those basic human needs being filled. And also each weekday we go to a different neighboring community. So people have a specialist, they can get to their specialist. So it's a good service. We saw in May 13 one-way rides, 1,300 one-way rides. And we increased it that you were eligible for 3 if we could accommodate you. And that's helping people come to the center, get to appointments and go home. So we're trying to do what we can for folks. About 325 to 350 people typically use our unduplicated use the service. Dining services is growing. I've mentioned that many times. We have one dining services coordinator with a vast background in the field of hospitality and restaurants. And we've added past year a little continental breakfast every morning. We keep an eye out for people who may be food insecure, but also it's just a nice thing to do to welcome our guest. Erica Blumberg, who's our coordinator, refers to folks as our guest, our dining guest. That makes people feel good and welcome. So we have volunteers that help Erica, and we serve them coffee, give them a little light breakfast if they would like that. And then they oversee the congregate meal program Monday through Friday. So we work with AgeSpan. AgeSpan is the Area Aging Service Access Point, or AAA. And there's one in every area. Down in my neck of the woods in Gloucester, there's senior care. We were under North Shore Elder Services, merged with Merrimack Valley. It's now called AgeSpan. They're the home care agency in our area. We contract them for small grant for nutrition, small grant for transportation, but it's a partnership of sorts. And I would, kind of going back to social services, they serve homebound when we refer. We serve homebound known to us, and our social workers will do home visits. But we work closely with AgeSpan because those are the agencies that will supply the bathing, the dressing, the cleaning of the apartment, and those kinds of things. So just in terms of keeping the homebound in mind. And when we know somebody's food insecure, we'll work with various agencies to make sure they're getting food. And the Meals on Wheels home delivered meals program is a huge hit, and that's out of AgeSpan. They use the CLC space. Marblehead and Salem drivers meet each morning, get their route sheets, their meals, and then off they go to bring the homebound their lunches. And we coordinate with them again to make sure no one is food insecure. Try really hard to identify those people that might need added services and more food. Programs and activities. A lot of people think a council on aging is all fun and games, Well, we do have that, but like I mentioned, social services and transportation. But to the other pieces, programs and activities, lots of them are lots of fun. We have meditation, yoga, Zumba, all kinds of dance. We work with physical therapists in the area to come in and do balance classes. We do chair yoga. So we're really, as part of our mission statement, promoting wellness on every level. And, some people come once a week, some people come five times a week. And, we're offering connection in one form or another, whether it's programs and activities or it's that meal program. We are a welcoming place and growing.
Teresa, will you just speak a little closer into the microphone, please?
Yep, that's, everyone says that. I have a soft voice. I think people know we have a fitness center that's open. It's free. We have a volunteer who mans the room just in case somebody has some kind of a spell. And we have other groups that come in and we host them, like book clubs, positive aging discussion groups. We do have blood pressure clinics. And then, of course, our legislators come in, Senator Lovely, Rep. Cruz, Julio Mota from Mayor Pangalo's office. We also offer wellness lectures on special programs on a regular basis. We work with the health department and have a once a month wellness walk on the common, and it's led by maybe one of you, a community influencer, somebody who can tell a story about what they're doing for the city. I think Councilor Watson Feld was the lead walker one time, and we'll probably tap you all. But just, fun things to keep people moving and active. And we have some lovely partnerships with Salem State University, and how lucky are we to have Salem State right here. Work very closely with the nursing department. They come in during the course of the academic year. They come once a week and they offer classes or demonstrations like falls prevention, blood pressure clinics, how to read nutrition labels and things like that. And it's such a win-win having students come in interacting with our seniors who oftentimes love to share their stories. And the young students are always very interested in that. So that intergenerational component is pretty touching. And I think it meets everybody's need. We also work with nursing students from North Shore Community College, OT students and professors at Salem State. And we've worked with the Health Sciences Department in the past too. So those are great collaborations, and we continue them. One program I'm very proud of is the Memory Cafe, which I've mentioned in the past. And the Memory Cafe is a welcoming place for anybody who's living with any level of forgetfulness, as well as their caregiver. There's no real rules to it, but it's a place where people going through this experience, whether the caregiver or the person experiencing some level of dementia, can feel welcome and safe. So we have a facilitator who will bring in, a musician. We might do a name that tune kind of thing. We might do a pottery class. The Memory Cafe folks helped take care of our raised vegetable beds outside, kind of on the Boston Street side of the center. And it's really to keep folks who are going through this experience engaged with community. And again, feeling safe with others going through the same thing. It's kind of taking off all over the place. It started in the Netherlands, I think in the late 90s, went across Europe, and then finally to the US. So we've quite a few around the area, and we have a really great one. There was funding about 2 years ago that came to us from then Representative Tucker. It was an additional grant from the Executive Office of Elder Affairs, and this has helped us fund this. And then I'm going to be looking to the regular state formula grant from Elder Affairs to keep it going. It's worth, keeping going and funding. Just as a note, tomorrow we're having a certified dementia practitioner come in, offering a program called Dementia and Caregiving, Your Questions Answered. And we've got about 25 people signed up for that. And there was a little piece in the paper, I think this morning. So excited about that as well. I wanted to just let you know that technology is important to us to make it equitable and accessible for our seniors, particularly our low-income folks who might not be able to afford a laptop, or an iPad. So I just submitted a grant to the Executive Office of Elder Affairs, and we partnered with the Lynn Council on Aging. They had a pilot program in Lynn, so we were tapped, and the grant can go up to $100,000 for each council on aging. We may not get that amount, but it will allow us to purchase iPads, someone to train folks, and free internet service for a year. And this is because we're a gateway city, we were targeted for this, and it's a really good thing. So I'm hoping that we will get that funding. If not, HBAN just donated about half dozen computers to us, and we can at least reopen up a computer lab, which I believe happened long before me at the COA, but it's important. So I wanted to let you know that. And just touching upon a few of the goals and objectives, I mentioned Salem State and the work we do with them, they do with us. I want to just mention the kitchen at the Community Life Center. We've been working on this for a while, and there's a committee, if you will, and it was led by Mike Lichikowski and then Joe Candelaria, our facilities manager, who has now become the point person because Mike left and Mr. St. Pierre left. So we're it. And so we have a few folks, John Russell, who's active both on the board and the Friends, Joe, Erica, who is our dining services person, myself, and a few others working with Russo Bar, who's been engaged to do the schematics, and working with Anthony Delaney. We're just getting going on our first payment. This is ARPA funded, and then for 140,000 and 30, I committed about 30,000 from the state formula grant to fund the kitchen. And maybe going back and asking for more ARPA funds, because that's the way of the world. The process was slowed down because we did have stops and starts, but I think we're on a roll again. I'd like to say a year out that we're doing more in the kitchen, more self-cook. We will have a vent, a confection oven, and we'll be able to do more of this. In addition to the congregate meals, which is an entitlement program, those are free with a voluntary donation. We will have to charge for what we cook ourselves, but it'll be low cost. It'll be a cafe. There'll be healthy options for not only the seniors, but the city staff and the general community, which I know it was former Mayor Driscoll's vision to fill the center. Food draws. So in addition to our seniors, we'd like to see more people coming in during the day and making that area a community cafe. So it's been baby steps, but I do see it happening. So that's a real goal. Let's see. I mentioned the Memory Cafe to continue to grow that. What spun out of the Memory Cafe is a caregiver support group. So once a month, we have a caregiver support group that's well attended. Back in March, we held a caregiver retreat at Winter Island where these caregivers received Reiki treatments, a lovely lunch from Root, a flower arranging class, and it was a session. It was a support group meeting as well. But these are the kinds of things we're doing to serve those components of the community. Let's see. I know that's a lot. I just want to mention that the Friends of the Council on Aging is our fundraising arm, as you know, and they're an active group led by Andrew LaPointe. And the Friends are great. They do an annual appeal. They raise money in other kinds of ways. They help us sometimes to defray the cost of instructors or what we charge for classes, or occasionally enable a class to be offered for free. A big thing that the Friends do is offer Thanksgiving and Easter meals to homebound folks. And these are folks who really can't get out, have no one around. And I think the best part is the person dropping off the meal is rewarded. And we might be the only person that homebound senior sees that day. So the Friends do that for Easter and Thanksgiving. It's very successful. And just mentioning that we do have a very strong Council on Aging board. And since I got here almost 6 years ago, at my first meeting, I remember they were talking about ADUs and more affordable and subsidized housing for our seniors. And that is their number one mission, is more subsidized housing for seniors. And I know that we all share that challenge for all age groups. In terms of the budget, yes, we've gone up a bit, but prices are rising when it comes to when we do our self-cook food. Contracted services is always hard to figure. We share the contracted services of the Community Life Center with Park and Rec. And so we work together to forecast what we should project. Various contracts are multi-year, some single year, but we're maintaining the grounds, we are maintaining the elevator, and those kinds of things that really our facilities manager is in charge of. With our fleet of vehicles, they're getting older, so we always assess to say what's worth keeping, just like our own car. How much money do you want to put into it? We forecast about the same each year for vehicle parts and accessories because we just don't know with a vehicle what's going to happen. Not too much drastic changes in the operational piece as far as I can see. I will mention dues and subscriptions went up a bit because our Mass Council on Aging dues went up to $1,800. Then we do take a few other smaller memberships, something as simple as subscribing to the Salem News because our social work team tracks obituaries so we can be in touch with families. And what I want to do is I want to know what's going on in the city that I work in, particularly housing. So to us, that's worth having. And then some other minor things as well. I know there was the normal 2% cost of living. And then I was informed, I think by Anna and HR, there was some salary surveys done too, I guess this past year, past several months. So there are a few staff that just to make their salaries equitable with their peers in the field, neighboring communities, might have gotten a 3%. There was one 5% raise to bring someone up who was very low, a newer staff member, but now needs to be brought up with area peers. So it's not just done willy-nilly, it's done with care and with the help of finance and HR. Breath. Do you have any questions for me?
Councilor Dominguez.
Thank you, Chair McLean. Thank you, Teresa, for very nice and very informative information. And thank you for what you're doing. I'm very familiar with the work that you do, and I enjoy especially the event that you have providing and also volunteering for some of them. So I'm very happy to hear that you continue to move forward. I had a couple of questions. My question is, first one is on the capacity that you have in the physical location. Is already up to the limit, or you think you have more room to include more seniors or more?
What programs?
Yes.
We have good space for sure. And in speaking with Rosanna Donahue, who is our activities coordinator, it's funny, this question came up last week. We could run as many as 8 programs at a time using program rooms, boardroom, a lecture in the great room. We have room, and I would say we're active till about near 2:00 typically, because a lot of people rely on our transportation. It only goes till about 3 at the latest, based on the staff capacity. So the Community Life Center is open, and then I think there's more room in the later parts of the afternoon. There's a lot of park and rec programs that go on in the evening. So not so much council on aging, but more general community come in the evening. In terms of council on aging, the programming is very robust. And then, but you go back to staff capacity. Rosanna's full-time working on activities. Her immediate supervisor is Kathy McCarthy, who's split between COA and Park and Rec. So they're working 150% with programming. But in terms of space available, yes, there's room for more. But I don't know that we are staffed well enough to be the people to do that.
So you would say that we're providing services to the community in a very good number capacity. I mean, the communities are being well served with the programs that you have right now as so far?
I believe that the council and that the seniors of the community are served well by us, very well by us. We even have wait lists, and so we try to rotate people to make things fair. Um, and as far as the community life center is concerned, the community life center is the building. And I know it's a goal of all of us to have robust programming there. And so I would say many community groups use the building. They may not be programs of Park and Rec or COA, but we have the Garden Club. We've had Eagle Scout ceremonies on Sundays. We've had Over the Rainbow come in for suppers at night. We have a drumming class. We have in the past had yoga. So it's pretty booked. May not be every evening, but pretty robust. Would we like to see more groups coming in? Of course. Do we have the staff to oversee all of that? No.
That would be maybe an increase in the budget if that happened. Uh, an idea, I think you mentioned that the collaboration with Salem State is in good standing, which is pretty good. I would like to see maybe more the youth involved.
Mhm.
Are you thinking about collaborate with the Salem State public schools to bring some of the youth so they can maybe be involved with our seniors and teach them how to contribute more into our society by giving them. And I think that would be a two-way benefit. Senior would benefit from, and also the youth would benefit from. Do you have any idea? I mean, any thinking on into that maybe?
Yeah, sure. And of course, we would love that because the intergenerational experiences is be impactful. Um, Up until a few years ago, we were working with the ROTC because of whoever their leader was at the time, I forget his name, was interested in working with us. And so we got the ROTC kids to do snow shoveling. And so that was fairly successful. It was, making the match. Um, and then I tapped them again and they weren't interested. We have looked into working with the schools and I contacted groups like National Honor Society and those kinds of groups. We've not had a lot of success despite the efforts, but I think we can probably try harder, maybe make a meeting with leadership at the higher levels of the school department to do this kind of thing. So it's certainly on the radar. We've done, bits and pieces through the years, and I would love to do more. Occasionally, we will work with a particular classroom. Recently, it was just me. I wish the kids could have come, but I worked with a classroom from the Saltonstall School. They were just interested in different organizations in the community, and so they chose the Council on Aging. So I Zoomed with the teacher and the students. I think they were about 7th or 8th grade, and told them all the facets of what we do in a way that they could grasp it. And they all had to write about it. And so I saw some of the samples of the writing. And these kids, the school is making a donation to the Council on Aging for like over $500, which is terrific. So that's a great partnership. But wouldn't I have loved them to be bussed over, we do have the schools come. It's different than a project, and I think that's what you're thinking of. But we have the middle school and the high school choruses and bands come probably 2, 3 times a year, in particular around the holidays, and they entertain our seniors. We've had some drama groups come and do excerpts from their plays for the seniors as well. And we have had a few students doing their own study through, I don't know, whatever major, usually health sciences. And we've identified seniors where students can come and have one-on-one conversations. So we identify seniors who are willing to share their life story with the students. So we have done, a bit, but I'd love to see something regular with the public schools or any school.
Yeah, I have so many questions. I just want to limit it because of the time. I know some of my colleagues have some questions for you. But my last and final question is you referred to, we maybe had that conversation before. It's on regard to the diversity to bring more into the whole entire city, not only one specific group, but meaning like that. Have you been increase the numbers or diversity in the members that you currently serve?
Slightly, slightly more Spanish speaking folks, and I don't have the breakdown for you, but I could supply that. Rosanna Donahue, who is our bilingual staff person, has been pretty instrumental in reaching out into the community, along with our social workers, going out to housing, bringing samples of our programming. So we tell people, here's what you can experience at the Council on Aging at the Community Life Center. We can even provide transportation for you. We do find that some people prefer to stay with their own ethnic-based, say, community house or community room. I don't know that we can change all of that, but we will always try to bring in, everyone. And again, it's a welcoming place. We do have a population of Filipino people who come every day and participate in so much of what we do. And they share their culture, they share their food. And we always need to do more of this kind of thing and keep the outreach going. We've had some luck with Charter Street. There's a fair amount of Spanish speaking people there. We tried to initiate a Spanish speaking memory cafe, but it didn't take off, but we can try again.
Thank you.
Councilor Merkel.
Thank you, Chair McLean, and thank you for the great you really gave a great overview of everything going on there. And as your council liaison, it's been a pleasure to work with you over the last year. And I can speak to firsthand how impactful all the programs are that you went over, not only attending myself, but I have friends that go to the Memory Cafe. I have a neighbor that really appreciates your caregiver support. So I appreciate the focus you have on the crisis that a lot of people are in, food insecurity, their mental and quality of life, well-being, and also the fun factor because your events are a blast. One thing I'd like to point out is the work with the Friends on the Council on Aging. The budget before us would be higher without them. So that's really appreciated for what they contribute to what's going on there as well. With the other thing I want to mention too are the efforts by the board to not only I attend the board meetings, and not only are they advocating for affordable housing, but the conversations are, how can we get more of our elder adults voting? I mean, how can we, they're trying to think of everything, and to bring people in from around the city, like you said, and good luck with your grant.
Councilor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair McLean. Thanks for coming. I'm pretty sure we met when I served with you on the Leadership Council for Salem for All Ages. I want to do a shout out to Mayor Pangallo and Pat Sato for all their good work, collaborating, bringing diversity to that group. And matter of fact, when for many years when Council Presniewski and I served on the then No Place for Hate Committee, Pat Sato would come in and talk about that ageism is really one of the only accepted discriminations. And so one thing I just want to recognize that you do, in addition to what you talked about, is how you bring dignity to so many people, because people being isolated or not feeling like they contribute to the community, may have lost some of their esteem, and just want to appreciate the way you've brought dignity to so many people.
Thank you. It really takes a team. We want to validate people and make sure they know that they're important and welcome. And in terms of Salem for All Ages, yes, we've worked closely over the years with Patricia and Mayor Pangallo and the great group to engage more people. But that ageism group that kind of spun out of Salem for All Ages is pretty significant. So this group gets together and discusses books that focus on ageism. And absolutely, it's been too accepted. So this group and all of us, we're trying to combat that. It's a big thing in our culture. So thanks for mentioning that.
Councilor Marcelo.
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad you brought up Salem for All Ages because I didn't see it anywhere in the narrative, and that really struck me that I was curious how you work together with them, with the programs.
Okay. Well, typically I do mention them, and if I miss them, then I'm sorry that I did. Yes, it's been a partnership over the years, and I think primarily to try to bring more people into the Community Life Center, not just the Council on Aging. I mean, there's a big focus on seniors, but to try to get people into the Community Life Center. And Salem for All Ages puts on a lovely speaker series over 2 seasons during the year. And that really helps bring, I think, a new set of faces into the center in the evening. And so, that's not our program, but they're coming to the space, and that's important, and we support it. We help set up for that evening, that sort of thing. We've been able to speak about our programs, taking a few minutes to encourage people to come. But it's definitely been a partnership, and I think the ageism group right now seems to be taking off really well. Yes.
Okay. You talked a little bit about mental health in elderly, especially after the pandemic, I would imagine. And I definitely have a concern with that. And I have a concern with the homebound population and caregivers of homebound people that are therefore pretty much homebound. And you did mention that you had this retreat, but I really feel like that is a group that's missing in the city. And so just kind of looking through your narrative here, you talked about, collaborating with the community impact unit with concerns for the elderly, but that's like already too late. I feel like we need to do more outreach for people who are homebound and not connected. And I've spoken, to the Salem for All Ages group about this too. And so I'm wondering if besides the ARPA funding for the kitchen, if you applied for any ARPA funding for programs, for mental health programs for the elderly, because I think that's missing too from ARPA funding. I think we talked about this with the ARPA presentation. I think there's opportunities there and there's money there. We still have money in ARPA. I would love to see more outreach and more support services in the mental health area for elderly.
Agreed. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why I'm planting the seed that we need, I think, a clinician going forward. And
And I wonder if the ARPA funds could help get that started now.
that would be super.
Yeah.
That would be super. So I just need to be led in the right direction for that. Yeah, certainly. We had a 2-year relationship with North Shore Community Health Center. It was through a grant, and they were the lead, but we provided access and space for a mental health clinician to see seniors identified, referred by our social workers. Then the pandemic hit, and seniors weren't too keen on doing telehealth. It wasn't that successful. But once we were back in person, it really took off. And so they sent a clinician a day and a half a week to the CLC. We gave space. And I think what was so good was that seniors felt more comfortable in a space that they knew, where they knew they could get a ride with us. They felt safe with that social worker who made the referral. And we had a terrific clinician. Unfortunately, at the end of the grant, their demands were so high, they had to pull her back. So that was just, gosh, maybe half a year ago now. And so this is why this is so on my radar, because we have identified that this was successful. We need to do something about it. So I would be happy to have discussions about ARPA funding for even a half-time person to start. Yeah.
The Are You Okay program, do you know how many people are registered in that?
Not many.
Yeah.
Done a lot of outreach. There's only like 7 people. It's successful for those people. And we don't quite know why that's not successful. We've marketed it in various ways. It's been in the newspaper. I'm hoping that we can get more people, but it hasn't grown, and it's kind of a dilemma for us. But, I'm thinking seniors sometimes think I'm all set. I don't need any help. But it's how to reach those family caregivers to say, gee, this would be great. Would give me peace of mind, mom or dad, kind of thing. So a way to market that, or maybe have some general publicity coming from the community, that it's not just benefiting the seniors, but family.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've seen it on social media from the city that it's been restarted. I think there's a lot of opportunity here for publicizing programs from your group. Yeah. Um, um, so many of, oh, I know. The last question is, when your social workers go out to um, home visits, they do home visits.
As needed.
What if the residents are Spanish speaking? What do they do then?
That's a good question. We've often had to have our activities coordinator translate. And, I can't tell you off the top of my head when that has been a challenge since I've been here, but we have used Rosanna to interpret with the person's permission, usually over the phone, though. The social worker will go out, but it's pretty hard for her to leave. She works in a different capacity. And what I'm interested is what Eileen was saying earlier in that service where you pay whatever it is per minute, because I think that would be very helpful as we work with various populations. So I hope that's something we can all look at, to serve our folks better.
I did want to ask you um, about the transportation aspect of the work that you do. Um, I want to make sure that I'm getting the proper picture of what's going on specifically with the van driver service. I'm looking at some of the lines here. Some of them appear to be reductions. Some of them appear to be positions that were requested that weren't filled, but I want to make sure I understand how that's relating to some of the grant funding, knowing that from the time that I served as liaison to the board that there was some trouble attracting enough people to work in the van driving service, and oftentimes what you pay people is what's determining whether you can get people. So, are these real reductions? Have we lost van drivers? Are we just seeking new people? What's the real story?
We lost one person, and it's just being filled, actually. And some of their salaries some are just funded by the city, some are city and grant, and some are just all grant. So it's how we can do it. We're using the state formula grant for, I think, a few more this year. There's a Title III transportation grant that funds one person almost all the way. And what's hard about van drivers is you can say, okay, Joe Smith can work 16 hours a week. But oh my gosh, we have a demand and somebody's out and we need him for 2 more hours a week. And we're juggling, juggling a lot because we want to continue to serve our seniors. So it's kind of, there's a lot of moving parts with transportation, but as of late, we actually have attracted some folks, which is good, which is really good. We found some retirees who are getting bored and wanted something to do, which was kind of neat. And so that's great. There was a gap. I mean, things go in cycles. And about 2 years ago, I did a salary survey with neighboring councils on aging, and we boosted the pay a little bit. Now, it's not great pay, but it's kind of the going rate for the job, I mean, down the road, I would love to bring back, I guess, way before me, were a couple of full-time transportation folks with benefits. And I know that's a cost, but then it's a little bit more of a secure picture too, And so we'll look for other funding for that sort of thing. But I think if you give someone a full-time job with benefits, they're going to be committed and they're going to stay for a while. So, sometimes it takes a little money to get the quality. But overall, we have a really good transportation department, dedicated folks who really care about the seniors. We're curb to curb. We ask for a 2-day notice, just because the planning piece, it's a moving target all day long. But we have a great leader in transportation, and again, it's such a service because it's creating access.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments or questions, Councilor Hepworth.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the personnel budget in the amount of 559,296, expenditures budget in the amount of 116,750 for a grand total of 676,46.
Councilor Hapworth moves to approve the Council on Aging personnel budget in the amount of 559,296, expenditures at 116,750 for a total of 676,046. Seconded by Councilor Merkel. I should add, for the purpose of the record, that Councilor Stott excused themselves shortly, just after Councilor Merkel began her round of comments and questions. We'll proceed to the roll call vote. Councilor Hapworth.
Yes.
Councilor Merkel.
Yes.
Councilor Watson-Felt.
Yes.
And I am also a yes, so that is 4 in favor, and that carries.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Anybody need to point out anything that I missed this evening? Just finance.
And the only other item other than the finance department is the general fund transfers out, and those are on the agenda for tomorrow. And then according to my tracking, everything else has a line through it so far.
Wonderful.
Okay, finance, I believe, is tab 5. Briefly, what does the finance department do? Our mission is to present a complete and accurate statement of the city's financial condition. We're responsible for all financial and accounting activities in the city of Salem. Many of these activities are prescribed by Mass General Law, and for the purposes of ensuring the fair assessment and collection of revenues and proper disbursement of funds in order to meet approved expenditures. I often say to folks, we're really not trying to be difficult or a pain in the neck. We're trying to just make sure we're always complying with Mass General Law and keeping everybody out of trouble. And these activities are guided by city charter and ordinances as well, and also, of course, sound financial and accounting business practices. Additionally, we, of course, I think our annual big deliverable is, of course, the budget document that is in front of all of you. We're also the department responsible for assembling, the capital plan component of that document as well. And just want to take the opportunity to give a huge thank you to the finance department team for their help putting together the budget document this year. So Nick Downing, Justin McCutcheon, who's been here every night, Elizabeth Smith, and Michael Walsh. They're fantastic, and I greatly appreciate them. And also just want to make a quick thank you to all the departments for all of their work on the budget as well. While I compile everything and spend a lot of time doing that, they also spend a significant amount of time being very thoughtful about their requests and going back and forth with me and, of course, the mayor's office on all the details in their requests. So it's a huge collaborative process, and I'm super thankful for all of their work on this. And also, of course, a huge thank you to the former acting mayor and Mayor Pingallo for just all the guidance and all of this. Thank you. In terms of goals and objectives, I don't believe this is in there, but after the committee meetings the past several days, one of my objectives is going to be to mitigate those duplicative lines, because those are very frustrating to look at. And so I will get that fixed for next year. One thing that I have been working on this year and want to continue to do with more sort of focus in the next year is improved fixed asset tracking and management. I've been working closely with Ray Joden a little bit on that. Our insurer offers a free service actually to help manage on the vehicle side. DPS does have a system that they use for repairs, but this helps manage like the life cycle and of vehicles and other assets. And so I want to dig in a little bit more on helping to make an even more robust capital plan while we look a couple of years ahead with requests from departments. We're not really tracking a plan that's sort of has our assets laid out somewhere with life cycle repairs in there and looking ahead to what those maintenance needs would be so that we can be very informed looking ahead of, oh my goodness, in 8 years, we need this many new, these many fire trucks will be at, kind of at end of useful life and these other vehicles in this building, et cetera. So that's one of my big goals. And related to that is also doing some significant debt affordability work, which I think will be very relevant for the community in assessing next steps on the potential high school project, just so that folks can be fully informed about whatever direction that takes, what that would look like in terms of resources. So that is a big priority of mine, to make sure that that information is available for everybody. And then one last piece that I'm hoping to do is to wrap in some more of the personnel budgeting that you're seeing actually through our accounting system right now. It's all assembled manually every year when we do the budget. And so that can oftentimes lead to errors. There is a way to do that manually through our accounting system. And so I'd love to launch that piece potentially for next year. And I think, just to summarize quickly, not a lot of changes in the department this year, although some that will look significant. The contracted services line on expenditures has increased substantially. That is almost all related to moving the auditing and accounting line over from the mayor's office to the finance office, so that all the expenses related to the annual audit by our external accounting firm, which currently is Powers and Sullivan, is in one place. This is also where we pay for our actuaries to do the reviews that are required for accounting for our other post-employment benefits fund. So they will all be in one cost center. Additionally, the other costs are related to COLAs and any salary survey adjustments that were made either during the year or are planned for next year. And I believe that those are the main changes reflected in the finance department's budget. Oh, in the contracted services, in the budget detail, there is a new line for the Pattern Stream budget platform tool. So that is the tool that is sort of an offshoot of our Munis accounting system, where we are now able to do the budget in the accounting system. And then the Pattern Stream tool allows me to then pull that data directly into all of the tables that comprise this budget book. So we set up all of these tables last year. When we make changes in Munis, I can press a refresh button and it will repopulate all of these tables, with the goal that this investment is basically significantly reducing the amount of staff time that is needed to put together the almost 1,000-page document every year, and providing more opportunities for discussing investments, adjustments, more substantive conversations than just the administrative, manually doing formulas in Excel. We are affording that by making some adjustments in what we're anticipating for other contracted services that were higher in previous years. We're not assuming the same usage going forward to afford that. And I think that's it for changes.
Councilor Dominguez.
Thank you. Chair McLean, how long you been in the position?
2 years and 1 month.
Because where you professionally presented is very well. Just wanted to compliment you and your department for the way you had done the work. Every year that this is going to be my 6th time, but this time I listening to you and your explanation and the way you presented helped me a lot to understand most of the things that going on. So thank you so much for your service, and I just wanted to bring that.
Thank you. You're very welcome. Thank you.
So Merkel.
Thank you, Chair McLean, and just thank you, as Councilor Dominguez said. Thank you for all your hard work.
No, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I do have to say, the gratitude, I think, is apparent for all of the work that you do, and it's not just in the preparation of this document. I mean, this is the output of all of the work that goes on, but the work that you do to find those efficiencies, to find those places where we can save money, to find the explanations. That really makes a long-term difference that really accrues to savings for the taxpayers, right? It's not just the discussions that we have, it's the actual operational choices that we make and the insights that you have access to that we just won't have access to on this side of the table. And so I'm really grateful for the granular level that you take it to. And I'm grateful for the clear attention that you pay to our feedback, right? You can see the difference year over year as we look at the book, even this year relative to last year, how you took some of our feedback and really incorporated it. So I can't echo enough my gratitude on top of what's already been offered. And you hear the phrase sometimes that, you couldn't do it without you, but we really could not do this without you. So thank you very much for that. Mayor Pagallo.
So since I won't be able to be here for tomorrow evening for the council meeting, I just want to take this opportunity to kind of echo that, add on and say that this was I think a very challenging budget process with 3 administrations having some kind of involvement in it to some degree or another, and wouldn't have been possible without Anna's leadership throughout it and the support from her team in the department. Yeah, just couldn't do it without you. And the extent to which Anna is an essential part of this city's operations isn't limited just to this budget. This is, you see the council appropriation orders, but it's really a whole lot more than that as well. Everything from our policymaking decisions to what happens in the retirement board, to what happens with procurement, to our ARPA efforts, and before that CARES and FEMA and all of that. Our capital planning, all of it is not possible without someone of your caliber and your professionalism. And I just wanted to put on the record to say we appreciate that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, we've handed out all our flowers. Councilor Hapworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to approve the finance personnel budget in the amount of $388,470, the expenditures budget in the amount of $134,15, for a total of $522,485.
Councilor Hapworth moves to recommend approval of the finance personnel budget in the amount of $388,470, expenditures in the amount of $134,015, for a total of $522,485, seconded by Councilor Merkel. Councilor Hapworth.
Yes.
Councilor Merkel.
Yes.
Councilor Watson-Felt.
Yes.
And I'm also a yes. That is 4 in favor. That carries. And we'll take a final motion. Councilor Hapworth.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Councilor Hapworth, seconded by Councilor Merkel. Councilor Hapworth.
Yes.
Councilor Merkel. Councilor Watson-Felt.
Yes.
And I am a yes. 4 in favor. We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.